Good afternoon. We're going to call the Parks and Recs Commission meeting for April 22nd together. If you will all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Armstrong?
Here.
Commissioner Boli?
Here.
Commissioner Cohen?
Here.
Commissioner Natto?
Present.
Commissioner Dilatory?
Here.
Commissioner Diaz?
Here.
Commissioner Goodman?
Here.
Commissioner Lamort?
Here.
Commissioner Navarro?
He let me know he would not be able to attend today.
Commissioner Pace? And Commissioner Young, Chair Young.
Thank you. Can you report on the posting of the agenda?
In accordance with our city policies and procedures, the agenda was posted Wednesday at 10:30 a.m.
Thank you. And approval of minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Any changes, issues, or concerns? Commissioner Lamort?
Well, I see that they don't really do the minutes the same. I made a statement last meeting about how big the sledge pile was. I said 4 stories, it was only 4 feet. So I just want to make that clear.
Okay. And is that corrected in here, or? But it wasn't there at all, either way? Okay.
So we have a new format to do the minutes. They won't be as detailed as they have been in the past, but if you guys are interested in going back to secure information, the postings are online of the video, and we can go back that way.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Correction
Boli?
under public comments, number 6, number 2, that was Michelle Johnson, not Jasmine. The name of the person that was Michelle Johnson.
Good correction. Any others? So can I have a motion for approval with the corrections so noted? Commissioner Lamort, and second? Commissioner Boli, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Commissioner Travis abstaining, and Commissioner Dilatory both were not available last meeting. Great. Do we have any correspondence?
No, we do not.
Great, thank you. Public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address Parks and Recreation Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Although the commission values your comments, pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. The time allotment is 3 minutes assigned for each speaker, and there's a chair available right across from me for a speaker to join. So, public comment?
Is that on? Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dave Paquette, and I am the current president of the Palm Springs Pickleball Association. I would first like to thank everybody on this commission as well as the city council for all the great work they've done over at Duluth Park for getting our additional pickleball courts added and also getting some nets replaced that were in need of replacement and other issues. They got another bench over there, but they've done a great job with everything they've done for the pickleball community so far. We are here as the Palm Springs Pickleball Association. Myself as the president, Mary Barcelo vice president, and Jim Seavey as the secretary-treasurer. We incorporated December of 2018, and the purpose for this organization is to facilitate the growth of pickleball in Palm Springs for the enjoyment, health, and social engagement of all people, offering organized recreational and competitive play by ensuring that the opportunities for continued development of all players on a collegial and sportsman-like environment, and by working to maintain and expand facilities as needed. Our goals as an organization is to provide instruction for all players and all levels of players and maintain the necessary equipment to do so. We want to have competitions and tournaments, which will help generate money for the city. We want to partner with the city of Palm Springs to raise funds for the maintenance and expansion of pickleball facilities here in the city. Even though we've expanded, there's room for more expansion. We would love to host some large tournaments here to generate some revenue for the city. We want to provide governance by the direction or for the direction of the city, and we want to actually pay to help maintain the cost of maintaining courts, painting, new nets, things like this. Our emphasis is on safe play and having fun, demonstrating sportsmanship, and getting exercise as well as having some laughs and winning in that order of importance. Membership is open to anyone with an interest in pickleball. Dues will be a nominal time-based fee to cover the cost of administration, purchasing, and maintaining equipment to keep the courts free of debris and in an excellent state of repair, and to use for training purposes of players of all ages. We welcome the opportunity to partner with the city, the development of Palm Springs as a destination place for pickleball players that come here from all over the world. We had 2 folks from the UK playing this morning that are here on holiday. We have expertise in providing guidance in the design, development, construction, and administration and use of the existing and proposed pickleball facilities in the city of Palm Springs. We believe it's in everyone's interest in Palm Springs to have local people who are dedicated to the sport of pickleball and have the expertise to assist in the development of any proposed new facility and conversion of existing courts involved in the process to ensure that simple mistakes like the placement of seating benches, like in Rancho Mirage, they made a mistake. They didn't, putting concrete benches right on the court where people can run into them, not a safe situation. So things like that we can help in the guidance of building new courts. We look forward with working in the Parks and Recreation Department in the City Council and the Parks and Recreation Council to expedite and develop much of the needed new facility in addition to courts at Duluth Park. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pass that around.
I let that go over a little bit, but we only have 1 speaker, so it's, I'll call protocol. So thank you. That being the only speaker, we'll close public speaking. The next item on the agenda is, I hate 2-sided printing. I can never find what I'm looking for because of 2-sided printing. City manager's report?
None today.
None today. And we're going to go right into the agenda. I was very concerned because we had an agenda about 12 items. You and I worked on it. We've pared it back, and we're moving through the meeting pretty quickly, so that's a great thing. We have a guest speaker today that's going to talk to us about the water waste treatment plant, since we had some questions. So if you come forward, sir, and identify yourself. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Doug Lohr. I'm the plant manager at the Wastewater Treatment Plant in Palm Springs. I'm employed by Veolia. We operate the treatment plant for the city under contract. As far as odor control goes, we've made some big steps when we started up the new plant back in September. The project that we put together there reduced the odors by approximately 78% that were coming from the treatment plant. So that was a big step. The other things we're doing going forward are basically right now what we're doing is reactionary. If we have a problem, we have 55-gallon drums that we put pine sol and water in, and then we have a diffuser, and they've proved fairly effective in localized odor control. Is basically how when we move our sludge pile into trucks to haul it off site, it creates odor. There's nothing we can do about it, so we try to minimize it getting off site by using these odorizers and misting around the area where we're working. And then going forward, we're working with the city engineering department and Stantec Engineering right now with the update to the capital improvement program. And there's water regulations that are coming that we have to deal with, and so everything that we're looking at now has an odor control aspect to it. The solids handling in the future will be all covered and odor controlled. So when we do have to load it onto trucks and move it from the site, there won't be an odor issue. There's no such thing as odor elimination. There'll always be some type of odor. But we're working diligently towards reducing it to the absolute minimum. Does anybody have any questions?
Comments or questions? I actually have one. So we had a public speaker who said that the methane gas that was, being smelled there was unhealthy for youth. Is there methane gas that is generated out of the composting process or the
Well, we generate
Reclamation.
methane gas in anaerobic digester. It doesn't see the light of day, basically. It's all contained. Anaerobic means no oxygen, so it's contained inside an atmosphere. The only time that comes out is when it goes through our flare, basically. It's an off gas. We have to off gas the flare, or the gas. And the flare is the only way we have to do that right now. But there's no exposure to methane in that process. So the odors really come from H2S. It's just a byproduct of the sewage handling process, and that's what causes the sharp, nasty, for lack of a better term, odors. And it's really minimized with the processes that we have going today. As an example, when we move the sludge, our sludge pile, the rains in February really set us back. So we have this huge pile of wet sludge. And so when we move it, it releases ammonia. It smells. So we've been working the last couple of weeks with our contractor to just get the entire pile moved off site as quick as we can. So then it's not going to be an ongoing issue. We try to minimize the stuff as much as possible.
What I'm wondering is, Janet, is there a way that you can work with Doug to get sort of a statement that can get into the minutes that, indicates that we're not talking about, methane gas, because that's not something that would be happening, and, reference to the 78% reduction in the odors and the anaerobic HS2 and exactly how that's impacted? Because I think by statement of fact, getting that into the minutes, that's about the only place that we have that would do that. But if we can work together on that, I'd certainly like it, because I like dealing with facts. If we've got a problem and it's a factual problem, then let's get it taken care of. But if in fact we don't have a problem, let's get that stated as well. So, Commissioner
I
Lamort.
noticed last week that as a septic pumper was emptying his load, they just tip it up and there's raw sewage that goes down into a drain. And it's not undercover. It did smell, that's why I walked over there to look at it. But there was a septic pumping truck that was dumping his load, which was raw sewage, into a hole in the ground. And my point is, can that be done under cover so that doesn't cause an odor as well?
Well, it should already be done that way. We have a hose that connects to the back of the truck, which connects to a process that's underneath the grating, which is odor controlled. So there should be no odor associated with them dumping. If he was doing that, he was doing it without our knowledge.
Because
We
I
don't
could
allow
see
it.
the sewage coming out of the
Yeah.
truck. There was no pipe there.
Yeah, we struggle with that sometimes. Their truck gets plugged up or whatever, and they think they can just dump it on the ground. And that's not the case. We deal with it as best we can with the staff we have available. And they all the pumpers know, they're well aware of what the rules are and how they're supposed to react to that type of stuff.
Charlie, could you go back to your schedule and see the date and time so that you could let them know when that happened? Maybe they can identify who the truck
Sure.
delivery
It
was.
was last week, but I'll figure out what day it was.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Boli?
We've had some people come in and make comments that there's times that it's worse than others. Is there any schedule that you've set to that the process gives off more odors at certain times than others through the process? And how often do you move that pile of sludge? Is
Well-
that maybe what they're talking about?
Yeah, the sludge is generated daily. We put 35,000 gallons of sludge into the digester, and 35,000 gallons a day comes out. And that varies, can go up to 50, 75,000 gallons a day. And so when we dry that, or when we put it in the sludge beds, it's like a big tank that just sits there and it dries, or we use mechanical means to dry it. It gets it to 20% solids, and then, you have that wet pile of sludge sitting there. But typically, we don't keep it on site very often, I mean, for very long, because we want to get it off the site as quick as we can to reduce the odors.
Is it like the same schedule every day? The same things are being done every day, or is it Monday, this is done, Tuesday, this is done, or?
Well, for the most part, things are done the same every day, but there's always exceptions to that. There's always something. You know, if we have an influent, you know, we get a slug of something, we don't know what it is or where it came from, but it can affect the process. And we have to make adjustments, and sometimes that'll cause odor in one of our processes while we're trying to get the adjustment to take. You know, and it's very variable. But we're very sensitive to the odor issues. I mean, if I come in the morning and driving into the plant and smell an odor, then we're gonna find it what it is and fix it right there on the spot. That's what we like to do, is to be able to respond immediately to whatever the concern is.
Commissioner Cohen?
A couple quick questions. First of all, it has definitely gotten majorly better over the last several months. So thank you for that. In addition to that, just curious, besides moving the sludge, is there anything else in the process that typically causes the odor? We've noticed it, for instance, later at night when there's no trucks around, nobody's doing anything, yet it seems to happen at night, that there's more of an odor. So we were just curious, are there other parts of the processes that we ought to be aware of?
No, I mean, there's no real, it pretty much does the same thing 24/7. You know, the things during the day that happen are like the pumper trucks that come in and do stuff. The sludge gets hauled during the day. Those are the things that are different than what would be happening overnight. That being said, the potential is there for us to get that slug discharge, and then it upsets the process in the middle of the night. But I wouldn't say it was a very common thing. You know, even though the units that get upset, they're called gravity thickeners, they get upset, they're odor control. They do have odor control around them, but sometimes we just can't catch it all.
If there is something that people who are there a lot notice as a trend, not just a one-time thing where there could be an issue, but hey, it's been really bad recently. Is there a contact person or number or email address that we could tell people, hey, send that, let them know they probably would like to know that that's the experience that's going on?
Well, actually, what we're working on is posting a sign at the pickleball court specifically that has the phone number of a person that will answer the phone and deal with the problem immediately. It's been in the works for a while now because I had to get it set up on our end for our personnel to be available at that phone number. But we're nearly there as far as that goes, and would like to post signage that says, if you have an odor problem, call this number. And that gives us a chance to deal with it immediately. When I get a call from somebody 3-4 days later, I have no idea what happened and I can't fix it, you know. But we'd certainly like to try at the time, so that's certainly something that we'd like to do.
I think that would be very welcome. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Goodman?
Yeah, and so I'm a novice at all of this, and I'm just kind of curious on why a waste treatment plant or facility was placed next to a park. And, I mean, is it reasonable to even think that it gets moved? It just doesn't sound healthy, doesn't sound safe. I'm pretty stunned listening to this conversation of sludge and waste and sewage, and it's like next to it sits on a park.
Right.
It's like, who thought of that?
Well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I'm wondering, is this like the airport?
Well, I mean, we can Google and just look to see like what other cities are doing. Is it reasonable to think that it should be moved? I don't know.
My personal experience would be no, I don't think that'd be possible. But that doesn't mean that other measures can't be taken to minimize the odors and to be a better neighbor. The treatment plant was first put in 1960. And if you look at the maps from 1960, there wasn't a lot out there. And they pick it because it's one of the lower points in the city, so it's all gravity flow to the treatment plant. You know, in this city, we only have 5 lift stations, which are on south of the treatment plant. They have to pump the sewage back up to it. And whereas everything else up from this way is all gravity flow. That's why they place them the way they do, is to get the most gravity flow, because it's basically free. You don't have to pump it. I toured a plant in El Segundo last week, and they're right on a golf course, right, you know, have neighbors right next to them. I mean, it's the nature of the way we live, I guess. You know, these facilities are installed, years and years ago, and, you know, everything gets built up to them, similar to the airport situation. And we just do the best we can do.
Commissioner Lamort?
Yeah, I'd like to make a suggestion. I've seen the barrels with the odor control, they really work. You know, at first I thought it was kind of goofy, barrels of,
Against water and pine sol.
yeah, pine sol with a fan blowing, that was the way to cure it, but actually it does. I mean, I was amazed by it. My suggestion is that the sludge pile is over by the kids' park, and that's where I smell it the most. So I'm wondering if you couldn't put some barrels blowing that way, so when the kids are in their park, they don't get the smell as well.
Sure. In the softball field area, correct? Yeah, okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions or concerns? I'd like to personally thank you for attending. This is the second meeting you've attended to help us through this. And I realize yours isn't an easy job necessarily, but I really do feel like you've been very responsive, and that, you know, I hope you'll continue to work with us, and we'll, you know, try to achieve. I don't know that we'll ever be able to separate that park and,
Yeah.
you know, what you're doing there, but I do appreciate your working with us, and I realize
Thank you.
you do care about the constituents of our city and,
Yep.
and
Yep,
the people that
absolutely.
we care about. So if there are no more questions, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dave.
Chair Young,
Yes.
we accidentally handed out the previous agenda that had 11 items, so I would like to hand out the correct one if you got an agenda from Janet, so.
We're down to 7, correct?
Yes.
And I printed that one off this afternoon.
Okay,
so I'm
good. So if
I'm
you
good
need
at
the
7.
updated one with only 7 items, I'll come to you.
No, you got it, you got it. Hey, yeah, you're good. You're good. Yeah, you and I are the same.
Thank you, young lady.
Yeah. We ended up combining a few things, so. So if we could have Stacy Schaefer come forward, it's discussion on ad hoc committee recommendations for Director Schaefer for Duluth Park. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thanks. So do you want to take the introduction in this one? I'm trying to remember.
So Stacy is here to discuss the subcommittee for the Duluth Dog Park was supposed to bring back recommendations for Stacy so that her and I could work together on putting a plan on what that would financially look like. And she'll also be addressing the Ballfield lighting issues that we've been experiencing.
So from the subcommittee,
Travis, did you get a chance to swing by the dog park? Yes. Okay, so Miguel and I met last week and did a walkthrough of the dog park, and we asked Travis to head out on his own. We didn't get a chance to correspond, but I'll be really interested in your comments. I'll just share what Miguel and I thought of, and then we can have a group discussion. We were both really pleased with the size. It's obviously dry, so we didn't encounter any of the challenges that folks in the winter did. And so we had a pretty wet winter, and from what I was told, the area was not really usable due to that kind of wetness on the ground. It seemed like it was pretty packed as far as the sand and the dirt, so there wasn't a lot of material that could blow around. We were a little concerned in the summer. So we have concerns about the winter and what material could be used to be able to absorb any of that extra moisture. One of the things that we found online and talked about was mulch. Something maybe, I don't know if that's simple, but versus redesigning and redoing the field with DG or other types of pressed materials, that mulch for a larger dog, if it was small and of light color, could probably serve to absorb any of the moisture, absorb the dog waste, and create some safety. One of the concerns for summer were the foxtails. And so I don't know if mulching and putting that on top would slow that growth down, but foxtails are pretty dangerous for dogs. let's see, the other thing was, we thought the water was great, and they actually had a hose attached to a spigot, which was super good, in addition to the fountain. So that was great. We had some concern around dog bowls. You know, they just pop up at the dog park, and they're not maintained. They're not the city's dog bowls, so they're not maintained, they're not clean, and that's where we find most of the, what would you call that? Well, it's the, it's communal diseases, like viruses and bacterias and stuff like that would grow there. We would recommend that there be a ban on all personal dog bowls. Just eliminate it, so that it's not there. The hose, the water, that seemed like a really good solution. There was plenty of seating and no shade, so shade would be a recommendation. So some sort of shade, some sort of ground covering that could eliminate or reduce the foxtails and absorb in the winter. We thought mulch was a good one, bowls, and those were the three things. Otherwise, we thought it was a really good use of space. Travis, what were your thoughts as you walked around?
Well, one, I want to say, that space, I think for the dog park community, there's been sort of a lot of grumbling about it, and I think sometimes unfair, because it started as this extra space, right, that we were going to do when we had problems with the main dog parks at City Hall. And some of the users didn't understand that. So there's been complaints, well, why didn't they put grass there? Well, we want to eliminate grass, right? But there's been a misconception that somehow this was supposed to be a brand new dog park with all the same kind of bells and whistles that our main dog parks have at City Hall. And so I think that's one reason we get complaints about it, that people didn't understand that this was supposed to be something extra that we were doing, But now it's grown into something more, I guess, that we want to keep, which, was one goal. So for me, it's a little hard to get out of my head this idea that, people should be happy with what we have given them in some ways. But we're kind of beyond that point, I think. And so the complaints I've heard about is, number one, is the shade issue, and that was the complaint at the small temporary park as well. When that was there, it's just, especially in the morning times, it's just so hot there because the sun is coming down. In terms of the ground cover, I've asked different people. Mulched, I think they use some kind of mulch at the Cathedral City Park, like palm fronds, and there's been a lot of complaints about that and picking up waste and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know if there is really a magic solution. I know at the park we have here, especially on the small side, when we put in that gravel, the complaint has been on the small side that it's just too big for the little dogs, and eventually, hopefully, when that goes away, we'll get something better for the little dogs. So I guess I'm just trying to say that any cover we put, I think we're going to have complaints. I just think that's gonna happen. The idea that we weren't going to have anything but sort of dirt there because we didn't want the turf, and it was an alternative when they have to reseed. People don't appreciate that or understand that. So I really don't have any. What people I've talked to have all sorts of ideas. People want artificial grass, they want real grass, they want this or that. So, this on the dog. I didn't pick up on the dog bowl thing. I mean, that's a issue at the current park. But I would say trying to police anything like that is so difficult. Especially the dog park community. They're just gonna come back, and I hate to say it, if we put a sign up, no bowls, we'll probably get more bowls. I really, really think we will. I think all those are good ideas. The Giardia issue is really something that the owners need to take ownership of and clean those bowls out, to remedy that. And a lot of people do, but some people don't. So, I guess in the upshot, I think this is a really great space. Anything we can do to improve is particularly shade. But I think we're going to have people that are always not going to understand that this is sort of another option. And they can go to the other park. Obviously, we want to make it as good as we can.
Yeah.
So that's it.
One of the things I'd like to do, Cynthia, is if we could publish a little story about why we created that park. It was to back up the park when they're doing things, but it was also the whole concept. We discussed at length the fact that it was an alternative to a mountainside park where, I'm sorry, but the mountainsides, you wouldn't grass them. You wouldn't create an environment that was, shaded and absolutely perfect. It would just be using space that we had and trying to bring it, around. I like the idea of mulch. I like the idea. I'm a little worried about the bowls. I know I've talked to a lot of people who refuse to use any of the dog parks because they swear everywhere you go, there's giardia to be had. My thought is, I agree with you, if people would wash the bowls. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean rinsing it with cold water, though. To be able to cleanse a bowl, you wouldn't wash dishes like that at home, and there's probably not a good space for that to be done. It may just be that when people go through to do cleaning on a daily basis, you throw out the bowls. And I don't mean in the garbage can right there, because people will pull it out. But if that protects animals, I know several people I've talked to say they just hold the hose out and the dog laps it up and it does fine. My dogs wouldn't understand that at all. It would be, please, crystal bowl, please. But so I think, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Stacy, can you do this? Can you just price out what just basic sand? Like, if we lived in the Bay Area, like, no one goes to the beach with their dog and thinks that they're going to get turf. Like, they're really happy at the beach, and dogs are happy at the beach. They're running around in the sand. And it is not as windy, and I don't think it has the same kind of risk as if this was up in the north side of town. So if you could just price, like, what would it cost us if it was just all sand, which I don't think would keep the foxtails down, and then like a mulch, and maybe we could look at prices.
Well, fill sand, we have plenty of. Just drive up Indian right now. I've been working on that for a week. That's the point.
It's closed.
Yeah. The bigger concern is it blows.
Right.
Sand would then become a hazard potentially for the ball fields, for
Okay.
players, for the golf course. So that would kind of probably add to the issue that we're already having. What we have right now, as you know, it is compacted. We actually take the tractors in there once a year, and we basically shred it all out, recompact it down, and at that point there's a sealant put on that helps with dust control. And that's usually on the off season, when it was at the end of the wet season. So we're trying to hold that down because as it dries out is when we have a better potential of more blowing dust and debris. Mulch is definitely an option. We could look at that. I don't know the logistics of how we would have to sanitize that. I would have to find out what that would mean. We have it currently at Bristow Park, and I think that's the only park I'm aware of that we have mulch. Anybody else? I
Are there
think
different kinds
Bristow.
of mulch? Because I'm thinking in the north, we had like tree bark.
Yeah, you can.
And-
There's rubberized mulch. There's tree bark mulch. There's cedar. You name it, you can get it. Generally, you will to do that. The expense isn't necessarily the mulch. It's actually prepping the area because we'll have to dig down. We'll have to make borders to keep it in, and then obviously purchase and lay, and then refill as needed. And we could absolutely put in the growth retardant underneath that. So that would eliminate and again, remember, this is up against the golf course, so some of the growth of the plant material we're not necessarily going to have full control over. We have landscapers, and then we obviously have our own staff that go in there with some frequency, and we can definitely target the foxtail season as a higher priority for just obvious safety reasons. But I can get you numbers on mulch. We can look at, I know somebody has suggested AstroTurf. That's a possibility. I do want to warn you, there's a heat concern.
Yeah,
Okay. Just,
I'd say your money,
we've been there,
it's
done
very
that.
expensive
Yes, yes.
and it's very hot.
And same thing at DG, we could definitely put in DG, the decomposed granite helps keep the debris down. Again, it's something we have to replenish with some frequency, and I do believe it gets a little hotter than the soft dirt that we have out there. That's slightly conditioned, what we have out there right now. And yeah, again, we fence this in with just the idea of having a place for people to go during the overseeding, and I'm thrilled that we're moving forward. One thing that I do want to come back on, though, for me to price out the shade structure, I need probably some more direction. Are you talking wind sails? Are you talking concrete? Are you talking gazebo, trees? It's a big space.
I think from attending the Measure J meetings and listening to city budgets, I really think that whatever is cost effective, I think we have to keep in mind that dog parks are a place where people socialize.
Yes.
And I think they go to socialize more than they go to exercise their dog. And so we really want to make it comfortable for people and we want to create safety.
Okay.
But I do think it should be cost effective. And I would be curious to know what are the different prices and, you know, what would be the most reasonable for that area.
Honestly, the pricing for these, I mean, aside from the actual physical materials, it's the engineering of them, of whatever structure we choose to build. We have to calculate for wind shear, weight, all of those are a factor. So really, once I can do some preliminary, but off the top, I would say probably the wind sails are probably going to be the most cost effective. Trees the most cost effective. Secondarily,
sustainable.
But we'd have to
and
wait 10 years for
sustainable.
those. We'd have to wait 10 years for the trees to mature enough, right?
Come on now. And then, yes, I think next would probably be wind sails. And yeah, we can look at that, maybe 2, 3.
I think the real thing I always like to look at is, I've seen some shade structures placed in front of buildings right on Sunrise Park, which they look like they provide shade, but unfortunately it's 10 feet away and it's about 2 inches of shade on the ground, even though it's probably a 10-foot by 10-foot shade. So one of the things is about positioning, best position that creates shade for, a particular period of time. So I think that'd be important. The other question I would ask is, the golf course is going through a little bit of a, what do we want to do when we grow up, because of some of the work that they've had done. And I don't know if any of the holes along the dog park or Duluth Park are at all, an opportunity for change. I know that you had an issue with.
Well, I did with CV Link because they were right next to one another, but the dog park, actually, there are trees between the hole or the tee and the dog park. So I don't see that as a problem at all.
So I was worried more about, could we go out and make friends with the golf course people and ask them to make sure that their side of the dog park is maintained appropriately so that we're not getting a lot of blowover of seed and stuff.
They've been pretty responsive. I mean, we've reached out a few times, especially, as you know, at times we have issues with vandalism to the fence between the two properties. So that's a heightened point for me, and they've been pretty responsive about actually even looking at adding a few more layers of shrubs on their side to help minimize the exposure that we have.
Coming through. Perfect. Commissioner Armstrong?
I just want to comment on Chair Young's point, about shade, because it does move, and that's one of the issues that the parks we have now over here. I mean, and that's why one reason trees are so great, right? Because if you look, especially the small dog park, people will move those chairs with the shade, and we haven't had this problem lately, but you'll see actually where the grass kind of, starts dying or getting used is because it follows the shade too. Although interestingly, when we renovated the park and put that concrete area, the small area in the back there, underneath that shade structure, sort of in the northwest corner of the park, that was never really used before. But now that there's concrete there, people are using it. That's an interesting thing. But I will say, when we talk about shade structures, to look at how people are using it now in the main dog park versus the small dog park. Small dog park has, just to be really maybe overgeneralized, often older people that have physical challenges, and they tend to sit and they bring the chairs and they leave the chairs there, and they are in these little groups of people. Where the larger side of the main dog park, where the bigger dogs generally go, people do sit and they like those picnic tables, things like that. But they are generally, because of how big it is, they're a little more moving a little bit more as well, but they still want shade at times, especially when it's really, really, coming down. You'll see them under there, but they tend to move a little bit more. So there's kind of two different kind of audiences of that, So I think you could create some kind of shade where give people some break, but I don't think they need it just to congregate under there like you see, at the small dog park. So when you're looking at structures, something to kind of think about maybe.
So maybe more targeted towards the entrance of what we have right now?
One issue with that, though, and is that when you have a lot of people right at the entrance, it causes issues when people are bringing their dogs in, and the dogs are in there, and they can get into a little bit, so maybe a little bit,
Yeah, for
To-
yeah.
We go to the east.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things they did, and I know we can't pay for a shade study, but one of the things they did with the downtown park was literally, they showed a planting session, and they showed what time of day and what time of year sun would be directive. And that may be something that we actually have to do, is to figure out kind of what's the best place and the angle to have things so that it creates the largest amount of shade. I don't think anybody complained if there was too much shade in there.
Right.
But on the other hand, we can't afford to do a bubble over the whole place, but.
So
Commissioner Goodman.
Stacy, I'm going to go back to something about the water bowls. I think if your team was able to, every time they came in, they just took the water bowls with them. After a while, people will stop bringing water bowls because their water bowls are disappearing.
That potentially exposes the city staff to a possible liability situation, very similar to the chairs and some of the other personal
Really?
furniture.
I mean, it's an abandoned property if you think about it.
Then we call the police, and the police will have to come and deem it to
Oh,
be
my
abandoned
goodness.
property.
Okay, I'll go every day and take photos. Okay.
If it's damaged, if it's, something very obvious, but the response is pretty dramatic when we have even moved people's personal property within the park.
And you can't
especially in the
post
dog park.
signs that says no personal water bowls. I mean, it really breeds disease. I mean, that's
I
what's so,
understand,
it's
and
not.
we can definitely look at additional signage.
I mean, I wouldn't take my dog to the dog park. 'Cause God forbid he drinks out of one of those bowls.
Well, and maybe though, and I think, Travis, you use this park a lot, maybe this would make sense too, to say, you're welcome to bring your bowl, but take it home, because we will be cleaning the park at the end of the day or whenever, and it will be thrown out as abandoned. So if the signage is there and people understand that, and we put that into our little story, maybe it would help. And it is really to keep, disease down and stuff. But again, I'm only going to bring my bowl if I take it back. So it's a thought.
And then I
Commissioner
think too,
Dilatory.
if we put up a sign, that says, please take your own water bowl, don't leave it here because, and then put a warning saying it breeds disease, I don't think a lot of people would want to, maybe they'll take it, oh, I don't want to be spreading diseases to other dogs, or I don't want my dogs to be getting this from other, from these dog bowls. So, I don't know, just kind of a precaution.
We can figure it out. Commissioner Armstrong?
Right, I don't want to belabor it, but, one of the sources of this disease is not just the bowls, it's the little swimming pools. They're really filthy. The dogs drink out of them, but they go in them with their paws, and it's just the breeding ground. There have been some people who remove those little pools, and they come right back. And in fact, I think at one point, people were chaining the pools to the fence. So I could see that happening with the water bowls as well. And it was Stacy's issue about
Yeah, with
taking
bicycle chain, yeah.
taking property when it's been chained up to the fence. So one common sense solution, just
Doesn't
people find a way around these issues. So, but to the point about the signage, actually, that was something I was going to bring up in Commissioner comments. We have a real signage issue at the dog park now. Those signs need to be consolidated to put another sign up. And that was something I was going to ask that we could put on the agenda because we have sign after sign after sign, just for some of the newer folks, knowledge, that fence was paid for with $100,000 of public art money after a national competition. It's a work of art. We're really blessed to have a fence like that. And if you go to the dog park, in other areas, you might feel like you're sort of in a prison yard or something. That fence is artistic and it fades away, and it's not, when you're there, you don't even notice there's a fence until you want to notice it and you see the beauty of it. So, I hope that we can work on getting, I know there's some signs needed to be on the fence, but all that other stuff to kind of organize it better, and maybe that could be one sign, one more thing we could add to a new signage.
One of the solutions to which, and I've had that feedback too about sign pollution in particular at the dog park. That's one of the reasons we have the message board there. And as and I think for me, the goal, my understanding was that where we have more temporary situations, like maybe right now if we have an influx of certain type of disease or some type of exposure, that may be an opportunity for us to educate people with that message board rather than adding another series of signs.
That, let's add that to the agenda though, because I like the idea of maybe even getting a permanent message board for both dog parks, which, and when I say both, I really mean
We have
everything
one
here
here.
and then over there. That is, a nice sign, but take everything off the fence, because you're right. The artwork of that fence, it's kind of senseless when you start hanging signs all over it, and then you lose the beauty of the fence itself.
I just want to caution, there are some regulatory signs that we have to have on.
But do they have to be on the fence, or they can be
Yes.
on a
At
signboard
the
right
en-
in front?
We have to have, at the entrance, we have to post on the entrance and exits for vector control when we do ants. I'll have to check with the attorney's office on
Okay,
that. 'Cause
yeah.
there are some that we specifically had to have on there, and there's others that we can probably move
And that
over
would-
to the message
That'd be
board.
fine, but I like Commissioner Armstrong's idea of, letting the beauty of the fence show through where we need to, because I think we have probably slapped a few signs on, and pretty soon there's a lot of signs on it for. One of the other, go ahead. Do you have another question? Because there's another item that.
Right, I just want to make sure we are all on the same page. So you're going to look at mulch or DG and come back, and we talked about shade. We know the foxtails were an issue. You responded to the water bowl, which we'll figure that one out as around signage or posting on message boards or something like that. The other thing was the blue trash cans. All the trash cans in the park are blue, which is like insane because everywhere else in the city and most of the state, blue is recycle. And brown, even in our homes, we have a blue trash can, a green trash can, and a brown trash can. And so we're raising a society to reduce our carbon footprint by having this, and all the trash cans are blue. And you walk around with dog waste, because if you're not using the large dog park and you're just walking around the park and you're like, what do I do with this? Not knowing that you can put it in a blue can. So we've got to do
With
something.
The blue cans, they're disappearing rapidly, first and foremost, so that's a unique problem. The blue cans actually are for recycling. The goal was those are temporary cans. Those are supposed to be put out, especially when we have ball games where we generate a lot of bottles, plastic bottles, cans. That's what they're for. The permanent trash cans are the concrete ones and the metal ones. So the idea that, and we actually did have black and blue. The side-by-side got a little sideways because they're temporary, so people take it upon themselves to relocate them as they will. The Sustainability Commission is currently working to standardize the type of trash cans they'd like to see in the parks. That would be, I don't know if it's going to be a combined bin or side-by-sides with the color code, but the idea with the blue bins, they were supposed to be recycling. And we were all supposed to be, there was also supposed to be temporary black trash cans as well. So
Well, it seems like there's different, so like at Ruth Hardy Park, there are cement recycle, and then there are cement non-recycle, and then there are blue recycle, and then there are blue like lightweight cans that get
The
plastic
plastic?
bags in them. Yeah, yeah.
those are, well, if those, the idea was those were supposed to be recycled. So,
Okay.
and those were supposed to be placed out in particular for events, and was really the idea, or where we could temporarily, when we needed to, if we had soccer fields over here for this day, and then boom, run them over to the softball fields. But once that standard comes through from sustainability, we're gonna match that across all parks.
Perfect. The last thing that we did want, and actually you wanted to talk to us about, was the lighting, I believe, in the baseball fields.
Yes. Well, so we discussed this today in one of our meetings. Long and short is our ball field lights are metal halide. For most of you, that means nothing. It's a very specific old technology. It's a type of light fixture that is hot, inefficient, and not eco-friendly. And the world has decided to stop making them. Yes, but that means we get to retrofit. We don't believe we can retrofit. We're going to have to put in all new fixtures. 30 lights per field times. Right now, we're kicking around a number of about $1 to $1 million. We have purchased everything that we can find in the valley, replacement bulbs for what we have right now, and we will obviously reach out as far as we can and give ourselves a little breathing room. The other issue is a good chunk of the lights, in particular at Duluth, we believe are original to the park's conception. So my vendors aren't really sure that they are willing to put new light fixtures in there. They don't know whether the fixtures will hold. So I'm having a contractor come in and do an ultrasound scan of the integrity of each of our ball field lights up there, so we can determine which ones we're going to have to replace, which ones will, great, you got another 20 years out of that, no problem. We don't know the status of the wiring. We don't know if we have the ability to retrofit light fixtures that can take our existing wiring. We really won't know a lot of those things until we get far into the project. We have the same scenario with the Ruth Hardy Park tennis courts. Those lights are also the same. And some at Desert Highland, and I think at the basketball courts as well.
So when you're saying replacing the lights, you really do just mean the fixtures at the top. As much as possible, you'd like to be able to save the pole that goes up 50 feet.
Yeah. The wood poles are probably, there's only a few of those, thankfully, but those are, no. Nobody wants to work on that. We also, again, this not just Duluth, this also includes the stadium and Cerritos. It's citywide. So it's a rather intense project. The other issue we're having, and I'm sure we're all aware, because the wiring was buried underground between ball fields, one of the issues we came across is the conduit. I don't know if it's due to age or how it was done or when it was done, but we've got shorts in the wiring running pretty good lengths, long stretches, long runs, and there's crossovers. So let's say this is the conduit of wiring from Ballfield 7 to Ballfield 8, and we know there's a short in there. Now imagine this is 150, 200 feet. The issue is now there's utilities running here, and water here, so it all has to be hand dug. We can't bring the backhoe, and so that's why I was quite shocked to get the first couple of quotes I got for chasing down the short and the wiring up there until I found out it was literally hand digging the trench to find the conduit to get it repaired.
One of the questions I have and one of the fears that I have now that you've said this is when you say you were quite shocked, I worry about in a wet ground situation, are we at risk of having kids hurt on the ground relative to...
I was shocked at the price, sorry, Les.
No, I know that, but it brings to mind my concern is, I mean, there have been issues in not in our parks, but in parks throughout the country where there was a short in a light fixture which a child gets their hand close to and gets electrocuted. And I do worry about the wires going underground. I know they're underground, but dirt conducts electricity.
We have, to my knowledge, and I can double, triple check this, but I have no concerns. We have ground fault interrupters on virtually every piece of lighting we have in those parks. I'm not aware of any situation in our city parks that we don't have that. And I will have that verified.
Perfect, thank you. The other thing I wondered about is when you look at the plan to do all the lighting over, it's 1.1 million? Is that what?
That was the estimate, 1.5.
1.5.
Sorry, that was the estimate from a few years ago.
And I'm hoping, again, I consider it to be infrastructure, and I think our infrastructure in the city needs some attention. But one of the concerns I have is, do we have to address it in a all or nothing, or do we say that's a 5-year project and we're going to spend $200,000 a year?
If I run out of metal halide bulbs in 6 months.
So one of the things that I will be looking at doing is Major League Baseball does have grant dollars available for lighting. So I will be working with Stacy and Musco to come and basically do a walkthrough of the facilities and see what it's going to cost us to replace. Major League Baseball does require us to do some portion of the match. I don't know how much it is. It could be up to 50%, but that is an option that we do have. So
Big league
And you would consider,
Major League Baseball.
Major League Baseball.
that would be James O'Jesse, that would be the stadium, that would be, are there
Duluth.
ballparks on Sunrise?
No. No, just Duluth. Duluth.
So Duluth,
Yeah,
James
Sunrise.
O'Jesse. Oh, and
Cerritos Field actually
Yes.
technically is on Sunrise.
also Victoria Park has a single, although no lighting though. Will they install fresh?
I have to find out all the logistics, but I do know
Okay.
that is out there for us to apply for.
Perfect. I like when somebody else pays for things that we need. Stacy likes when somebody else pays. Does anybody else have questions of Stacy relative to lighting?
I do.
Great.
So
Commissioner
what
Coldenow.
kind of time frame are we looking at to make a proposal or reach out to Musco and Major League Baseball or?
So their grant process is quarterly. The next time we can submit will be in the beginning of July. So I will reach out to Musco and then set up an appointment so that we can do a walkthrough. And then once we get back the information from there, then Stacy and I can sit down and say, okay, so if they're requiring us to match this much money, where are we going to be able to get that from before we really move forward to apply for that grant? I don't want to apply for that grant if we're not going to have the support of the grant matching dollars, because it just puts the city in a bad place for further grant applications.
Okay, but let's also look at philanthropic participation, so we can also talk to the subcommittee who goes out and looks for money. I think that's, I want to say Jeff and JR, and see if, in addition to looking for city dollars, if there's somebody who has a passion for baseball and helping us, it would match up. I mean, we've certainly got a lot of people from the baseball world in Palm Springs, although maybe, and I think former owner of the A's, it doesn't hurt to ask. So I just would hope that we would not move forward because there might be a shortfall from the one side. So if I can help with that at all, or any commissioners can help with that, let us know, because doesn't hurt to ask. Yeah. Any other questions? Are you?
No, I just, a lot of the teams and leagues and tournaments that like to come out here, that field 7 is to a point where those two lights, there's one light out of 4 shining on the infield. It's getting tough to see.
And that's a separate issue, and that's what I was talking about with the trenching and all that.
Yeah.
And we are, with our, as a charter city, and I think all governments have this, there's a certain dollar amount. When you exceed that, you have to get, well, for us, if we exceed 5,000, we need to get 3 bids. And the bids have to be apples to apples. They have to be exactly the same. Each of your vendors, and of course that means scheduling time to get the vendor out there, hoping they show up. You're out there, you walk through the whole process. This is what we need the scope for. Right now, in the situation we're in up there, we need 6 quotes from vendors, and finding 6 vendors in this area that even do this, and scheduling them, and we're working on it. That's a separate issue, and that's a repair, and we are working on that. We will get that resolved, but now we have to add in hand trench digging for a pretty good run, and utilities, dig alerts. So there's many layers to this one. It's not as easy as, oh yeah, we got a short and we just swap that out, and put in a new fuse, and we're good to go.
So is that at Duluth Park? Is this less of an issue as we go further into the season, or is it the fact that we lose the mountain? We lose the sun behind the mountain at 4:00. So
Short is a short.
no, I'm just talking about use of the field and darkness for players. I mean,
I don't think so. Not really. I mean, I don't think there's any time of year we don't have the lights on. When they're field play, it's field play. So I mean,
Okay.
obviously we run more often. We run longer stretches in the winter. But
yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for joining us, Stacy. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Stacy.
So the next item on our list is Measure J Ad-Hoc Subcommittee recommendation for funding requests.
Okay, our
Commissioner Boli.
Ad-Hoc committee met last Monday with Commissioner Cohen, Natto, Goodman, myself, and Chair Young. We were real excited at first with all the talk that we had, and about 2 hours before our meeting, I got a call from the chair of Measure J. And I kind of come into the meeting so dejected, I didn't know what to say to everybody. He said, I guess I got a little ahead of myself. In talking last meeting, and I brought it up what we were doing, he says, I got shut down rather quickly by the other commissioners at Measure J. They said, you're overstepping what we're doing. The money was directed for overflow at the downtown park. Any money's gone to Parks and Recreation. So we sat and talked for a good hour and a half, I guess, on how we can get around this and what we've got to do. Currently, what we are doing is we have requested a meeting with Dr. Reddy and Jeff Kors so that the group of us can sit down and say, who's paying for the bathrooms? Who's paying for Sunrise Park redevelopment projects? Is that how it's said? Who's paying for this? Are these Measure J? Are these city budget? Are these things that we're kind of lost? Dr. Reddy told us to the bathrooms. Ellen went to the Measure J meeting last Thursday, and they had their list of things listed out of what they were going to do, and the bathrooms are on there. Now we're really kind of confused. Why are the bathrooms on the Measure J money? We thought that was set up from another fund. So right now, we're kind of confused until we sat down with Dr. Reddy, and we had the meeting set, and it was, we're trying to get a new date because the date had conflicts for several reasons. And so that's what we're working on. Ellen, did you have anything to add from your Measure J attendance? What we were looking at money was for the 21-22 season. They're just approving the 2021 season. We were looking at 21-22. The other thing I will add is groundbreaking downtown is now set for 2020. It was set for 18. Well, with groundbreaking 2020, finish of the park in 22 maybe, and you figure cost overruns, there goes all of our money. So I'll turn it to Ellen or Commissioner Cohen or Natto or Young if they had anything to add to that.
No, I mean, I'll just start and say, I think you just did a great job of really the overview. I think we were surprised to see Parks and Recs projects on Measure J when we were under the impression that the restrooms, and Dr. Reddy actually sat here at a public meeting and responded to people in the audience that restrooms were going to be taken care of. And so on the Measure J roster of fundable projects, it was broken down into segments, and it wasn't necessarily what was presented to Dr. Reddy and then what he in turn told the community. And then we were a little surprised that Sunrise Park and the redevelopment of Sunrise Park was on the Measure J roster as well. We were pretty surprised it ended up there. We weren't really quite sure who came up with a $2.5 million budget for pickleball courts at Sunrise Park. And then the description of why we would put pickleball courts there. So I really think we were just left somewhat confused. I think the meeting with Dr. Reddy and with Jeff Kors will be really helpful. We'll probably have more to report back. And in the meantime, I did download some pickleball prices from other cities. And again, pretty surprised at the $2.5 million when pickleball courts are under $1 million for anywhere from 8 courts to 16 courts. So, but yeah, I think you did a good job with the overview.
Commissioner Natto.
Yeah, I'm kind of a little floored myself, seeing that on there. But I don't really have any other comment. I don't.
Okay.
I think Commissioner Goodman did a good job of summing it up. I think one of the things that we talked about at our subcommittee meeting was really how to position the urgency of this. I'm really not sure what $2.5 million means on this roster. Does that mean that they're budgeting us for that? And of course, we have to ask those questions. And but we also know that we have other priorities too that we talked about. And the idea was to create some urgency by talking about them in the sense that we have actual real safety issues. When there's no place in some parks for children or adults to get a drink of water in the desert heat, let alone dogs, or to get out of the sun because there is zero shade, not just not enough shade, but zero shade in some places, or bathrooms that are wholly either inappropriate or unusable. Forget ADA issues as well. We have all these issues to talk about. It's a matter of time until somebody gets hurt because there's just not appropriate, reasonable facilities. And people have short memories. You know, those of us who were here last summer, we had a hot summer, and somebody died in one of our city parks playing on the courts. And we talked about it at a city commission meeting afterwards about getting AEDs, automatic emergency defibrillators, put into as part of the bathroom renovations. Of course, if we don't have bathroom renovations, there's no place to talk about doing things like that. So this is part and parcel of a longer conversation, and I thank you for getting set up a meeting with Councilman Coors and with Dr. Reddy.
Well, one of the concerns I have is, I know that the subcommittee who looked at the bathrooms came back with about $1.5 million recommendation, but I'm seeing here that there's actually an item called Duluth ADA Access for 1.2 million, right above the 400,000. And I'm just wondering, I don't think we looked at ADA access, but I'm wondering if part of this does really roll into them actually approving the top 9 projects in our 1.65 being maybe included. I don't really know what ADA access means, so we can ask Councilman Coors and Dr. Reddy about that, because it may be that we're covered, but these just don't explain it. But I will tell you, as any budget works, the 24 items listed here are 42.9 million. And what'll happen is we say, how much do we have? And you count down the number of items, because these are ranked by.
They're not ranked.
Oh, I thought these were ranked by their order of importance.
Nope, they are not ranked in order of no. But on one page, which is the third page, I have extra copies if anybody would like one. They're ranked where it says current funds available, and that would be page 1 of page 7. And so Measure J came up with their top 5 that they are going to recommend to the city. And what is in that recommendation is park restrooms renovation and repairs at 400,000, Duluth ADA access at 1.25, which is a phase 2 of the restroom. And actually, they had a lot of things that were tied, and so there's really 7 items, and they are only to suggest 5 items, and their items total $12 million, and available Measure J funds are $3.4 million. So we know that all of that won't get funded.
But these figures that they have in this is for the 2021 season, where we were supposed to be looking at for 21, 22 for getting money.
It's for 1920.
1920?
This is for
1920, yes.
1920.
They also told us that they're supposed to spend $1 million a year for a community project.
Well, we've sort of given a report, but we will take this up with the subcommittee and Dr. Reddy and Councilman Coors, and actually Cynthia will be attending that as well. So,
Can we invite Stacy? Because I have a feeling that that ADA project might be something that Stacy is heading.
Absolutely, if we need to be pushing past it, but I would like to make sure that we are able to concisely and quickly go through our issues. So we may want to meet in advance to get our light items together so that we have a quick, 30-minute presentation on what our issues are, and then let them talk to us about what we need to do, because I believe Councilman Corrs was a little surprised that some of this stuff was ordered the way it was, and council wasn't aware of it. So it may just be a discussion thing, but we can move forward.
You know,
Commissioner
and I
Goodman.
think it brings up the, really informing the commissioners, like what's really going on. So I was really surprised to see these things on Measure J's roster, and it was never submitted to the Parks and Recs commissioners that this was actually going to end up on their roster, or that they were going to talk about it. Where did they get the numbers from, the explanations? I mean, none of it was consistent. So I kind of felt like bamboozled or like hoodwinked. I was like, wait a minute, we didn't talk about this, and who put that on there? And, so I really felt that Parks and Recs Commission was really neglected in this whole conversation. And that is a commission to commission and a city issue. So I don't know if somebody needs to look into that, or before things get on other commissions' agendas and rosters, it would be nice if we were informed. Like I said, I just showed up at the meeting as somebody in the audience and was really surprised.
Well, I don't know that there's necessarily a way that things get documented relative to people's, Measure J. I'm not quite sure that they operate caring about commissions. It's more projects that they feel are in order, and I think they think more about where they can apply the funds as opposed to those of us that are impacted by it. So I'm not quite sure. I mean, there's been discussion in City Council about a grander meeting of council members and a representative from each of the commissions. I thought that would have started already. It hasn't, but that would have been a great place to say, by the way, we're working on our, process, and we'd say, well, keep us in there because we've got big things that we need. So
Let me give you an example. Like the library, it's not going to break ground, or it's not going to even start its renovations, at least for 5 years. And the library shows up at every one of those meetings, and there's someone who is on the Measure J Commission who is on the library board, and they're having conversations about every year they're going to get $5 million until they get to their number. So 5 years from now, they got $20 million to build a new library. So, I mean, it's kind of feels out of place.
well, and I would remind you all that commissioners don't select the money the city spends, so they can be jostling as much as they want, and Measure J can jostle as much as they want. But 5 people sitting in that room next to us are the ones that decide what gets spent where, no matter what recommendations come forward. So just because somebody's asking for it doesn't mean it'll necessarily happen.
Well, I'll begin to attend the Measure J meetings so that I can come back and let you know what is discussed and updates and whatnot. I don't know how they got the information that was presented on that meeting, but I will start attending so that I can keep you guys informed and updated.
Would that $2.5 million have anything to do with that conceptual plan that you sent us this week of the pickleball? That looks like $2.5 million to me.
I can't answer that, but we do have a presentation later, and I don't know if he has those answers.
He does. So the quicker we get to number 7, the quicker we'll get an answer to
Go
that.
ahead to it.
Not that I want to skip over 4, 5, 6, or 7. Yes, Commissioner Armstrong.
Just one more comment on Measure J and parks. I mean, this problem that you all have been talking about goes back to the very start of Measure J, when the city asked the residents of the city to submit projects. And Measure J went on and approved projects that involved parks, like funding a veterans park that never went to before this commission. And over the years, it's been repeatedly said that they're going to solve this issue of more communication. So they weren't approving things that commission said knew nothing about. And here we are many years later, and the city has never really corrected this problem. But I think broader, issue when you guys are talking about how these things have been shifted to Measure J is, the city sold Measure J. A lot of talking points, parks was being one of them. And what I find disturbing is the narrative that the city, or some people at the city, have been promoting that this huge percentage of Measure J funds are going to parks, when in fact that most of that money is the downtown park. And I think as commissioners, we need to think about how we work in the system and also get that message out that we're not getting our fair share. And when city officials say this huge percentage is going to parks, it's a downtown park, which is a whole different animal, because there are people in our community who thinks the parks are getting, you know, a big share of Measure J funds, and it's not really correct.
That's a good point, Commissioner Armstrong, and especially in that the belief is that all of our local parks are attended by local people, but that downtown park, there's a big question mark over it as to whether or not that's really geared for those of us that live here, or the thought is those will be the people who visit and stay in hotels that will be using that park. And as nice as I'd like it to be for other people, I'd like our parks for all of the people who live here full-time to be better. All right, we're going to move along to the discussion on the fees and review of the budget. I was going to ask you to take that, Cynthia, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, we've already approved the fee schedule, did we not? And we were only left
However, I made a mistake in, there were 6 particular fees from the programming section that I did attach in your guys' mailing this past week that weren't spelled out correctly in the original programming fee schedule that you guys had approved prior to this meeting. So I am bringing it forward so that I can get some direction on that, on if you're going to accept those 6 or 7 that I did send out additionally, or if we're not going to move that forward.
So reviewing these fees, these were listed previously but not accurately listed?
Yes, I believe these are the fees that actually had been changed at the recommendation of the subcommittee that council formed.
Our recommendation didn't get adopted.
They're waiting for all of our recommendations to be rolled together so that their fees are done and our facility fees are done, if you mean at city council? No, this year, earlier this year, we actually approved a subset of, well, we thought we had approved all the program fees, but we hadn't done facility fees.
Right, and as I stated before, I made a mistake in not, these fees right here for programming were not in the document that I had originally handed you. Unfortunately, I had some confusion going on with everything that was going this way and didn't actually realize this probably until a week or 2 after that meeting.
So let's take 2 approaches. Let's take an amendment approach with these. So this, if we can entertain a motion, if these are acceptable, and if we want to discuss them for a few minutes, we can. But I'd like to make an amendment to our prior fee schedule, if these are acceptable, and then we can discuss the facility rentals, and that would be approval or denial.
Right.
So with that being said, as you look at these fees, are there issues, or are these acceptable as designed here? This is, I believe, exactly what Commissioner, or Councilwoman Middleton had requested, at least as I look at the Desert Highland subset of fees. It was relatively directed, so. Commissioner Goodman?
I was curious, is it for the swim center, you have an association fee and then there is a per-use fee, is that correct? That's how I read that second page, right? So it says swim center, adult, the proposed is $5 per visit. I'm assuming that is on top of an association. Or
So
like a-
currently with the swim center, you can purchase a 25 session pass. And it's basically a card that they print out, and every time you come in, they'll punch it out. Once you've used all those sessions, then you come back and purchase another card. And so that is in place.
But you have to have an association fee to
You have to pay
use
the membership,
okay.
yes.
That's a membership fee, thank you.
But the alternative would be a monthly fee for swimming, wouldn't it? Or are they all?
This
They're all
doesn't look like it
prorated
spells the
passes.
membership out. I believe this just spells it out on an individual visit.
Okay.
I want to say in the previous fee study that we did look at, the pass was addressed in there. So in this particular item, it looks like it's only addressing resident drop-in fee for adults and children, and then non-resident drop-in fee as well.
Okay, and the one that grabs me is the camp, the leisure center camp program, which goes to a lesser fee for a partial and a lesser fee for a full day for residents, and then an increase for non-residents. Predominantly, do our children do partial, or do they do full day?
They tend to do full day.
Full day?
Yeah.
Okay.
They come from all over.
Well, and remembering that the fees are considered local if they live in Palm Springs, if they attend a Palm Springs school, if their parents make their income from a company in Palm Springs, or if their parents work for the city.
Correct.
They would qualify for the
Resident,
lesser,
yes.
the resident rate. So only those parents who are bringing their kids in from Desert Hot Springs that do not live and or work, or they attend school, would be paying the higher fee. So my commitment to this group is that I will go to both the Desert Hot Springs and Cathedral City, where the predominance of our kids, when they're not locals, are coming from, and speak to them about the fact that there's a $30 difference, actually a $40 difference no, I take it back, 30. Well, 20 on a half day and 30 on a full day. But I will commit that to them so that they understand that we could in fact charge them the standard fee, and they could make up the difference if that city chose to do it. Is that something I need to get commitment from finance or Dr. Reddy on?
Let me check and I can
Okay.
get back to you on that.
Because I like to make sure that if we extend that we could actually, arrange for that city to pay the uptick for us, and then it would be fair to all the children. Any questions about these fees, or could we entertain a motion to accept this amendment to the fees?
I have one question.
Sure.
I don't understand why there is both an association fee and a per use fee. Why would you take the $5 from everyone in January and then as the annual fee, and then charge them to come in every day? I mean, I don't understand what the admission fee is for.
So it's
Okay, I see.
You want to go ahead?
So currently, there's a membership fee that a majority of our participants pay when they come to participate in any one of our community centers, and it's essentially giving them access to, let's say Duluth, for instance, they pay the membership, then they have access to the workout room, the gym. Obviously, if there's a contract class, then they have to pay that differential price for that, but then they do have access to the facility with that membership fee. The swim center, and correct me if I'm wrong, the swim center has the membership fee, right?
Yes.
And again, we go back to they do the card where it has 25 basically use on that card, and they pay a certain amount, which is cheaper than paying the per visit. I can't really give you a whole much more detail for that because I don't know it. I just know that those things have been in place.
Well, and I would tell you that the subcommittee that worked on our fees a year ago actually recommended that every person that entered a park and every person that used any of the facilities be a card holder. I'm a card holder. I don't use particular facilities, but I feel as a person who's resident here, I'd like to have a card in my pocket that says I'm entitled. Unfortunately, Parks and Recs doesn't issue a card, so it's sort of a
We're working on that.
good. I think that's a great idea. But my issue was that, and we worked hard. I mean, Travis and Trent and I worked pretty diligently on allowing the reduction of fee for a family who was in a condition that couldn't pay the full bore, and it was based on the federal poverty level, and that would apply. So there would be, sliding discount. Unfortunately, that was not well received by the council. They said, go back and do it, and this is what we'll lay out in front of them. So, any other questions?
No questions, but I'd like to put forth a motion to accept the fees as suggested.
So an amendment to the fee structure, because these are added to what we've already approved.
So put a motion forward that these would be an amended structure to what was put forward or earlier.
And seconded,
Second.
Commissioner Armstrong. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? You're abstaining? As opposed to opposing, or?
That's allowed.
Okay, absolutely. So it's recorded? Great. Thank you very much. The next section is on facility rental fees. And this is basically, what is the impact of, looks like
Do you need a
this.
handout?
You have an extra one?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does anybody else need some? Of course. Okay.
Are these all attached? Yes. The email?
All right, so basically, when we reconnected with the consultant that was putting this study together, he basically said that currently our fees that we are charging is enough to cover, they're basically breaking even. But we do have the capability of making a few extra dollars. And so that's something that we need to discuss. So on here, you'll see currently what we charge for the pavilion on page 3. And we actually have, the recommendation is to get rid of the commercial costs because we don't do that much commercial business. And so basically what we're going to be looking at is having the fee for non-resident and a fee for resident, and then the nonprofit rates. At this point, nonprofits, if you guys accept this, will get a 40% discount from the original price. And the reason the 40% versus just half came up was because when we do contract classes or facility rentals or things like that, and we have a different group leading the activity, they're based on a 60-40 split. They keep the 60, we take in 40. And so the nonprofit would just have a 40% discount from the original price so that we can continue to bring in some revenue in this department through our rentals.
So I can't think of a commercial experience. In fact, let me ask the Saturday when we move indoors with the farmer's market, that is a 501c3, so that is okay, so that's not a
Yeah,
commercial.
there's been very few commercial rentals. And that's why it was recommended to just eliminate that whole category. At this point, once everything gets approved, this information will be posted on our website, so it'll be much easier for our constituents to, get to a price when they're trying to do a rental for a party or for a meeting. And it'll just be a more easier, friendlier process to go through.
Okay, Commissioner Diaz?
Do you not offer a rental for the gym at James O. Jesse?
We do, is it not listed?
No.
Card room and conference room.
It is available for rent.
And then I see now, the swim center is listed. Yeah. Yeah. So,
That the swim center should be, the leisure center, for some reason, he combined pavilion and leisure together. So the first, it's where it says pavilion and leisure, it should be just the pavilion, and where it says swim center, it should be the leisure center. But the pool is available for rental, and that was in the previous fee schedule that we discussed too.
Okay, and then I guess my only question about so when we have the piranhas, is that also a 501c3 or is that a commercial entity?
We are currently attempting to verify their status,
Okay. And you can
but they
always,
are originally, when all of the facility agreement did happen, they were a 501c3.
we can also check with other cities because I'm sure it's the same piranha group that works throughout the valley.
Right, I believe we're just checking directly with the state.
Okay. So you are looking for a nod to go forward or a suggestion for a different pricing structure, is that it?
I think at this point, we are just looking for the approval of it. Basically, what Dan was recommending, that based off of the fees that we do have right now, we do a recommended 10% increase for the non-residential. And I think,
Flat for the, so if we could get a motion to get page 5 corrected by separating pavilion and leisure center and creating a separate line for swim. That would probably be exactly what you need, correct?
yes.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner,
Yes, I'm sorry. Sure.
I'm confused by what you just said. Are you suggesting that we still keep in a non-residential component, which I take it is what you're talking about, is the commercial component that you talked
No,
about taking
no, no.
out?
So prior to all of this, there was a bunch of categories that dictated how fees were, given to whoever was trying to rent. At this point, what you're seeing is the commercial rate has been completely taken out of this, but we still recommend having the resident fee, the non-resident, and a nonprofit fee. So that is what you're looking at now. So the recommendation is for those who are non-residents trying to rent our facility, that there's a 10% increase from the original base price. And then nonprofits would be a 40% deduction or reduction from the base price.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Commissioner Lamort?
Can I get some background only because I'm kind of new? Do I understand that if you're using a facility in a building, there's going to be a cost for it? But if you're doing a birthday party in Duluth Park on a Sunday afternoon, because it's in a public park, there is no fee for that?
That's not necessarily true. It depends on the number of attendees when people come and do the park reservation. So I think it's anything over 40, 50. So a party at a public park that has attendance of potentially 50 and above will have a facility fee. But if it's under 50, then it will not. But at that point, it also becomes a first come, first serve as well.
Sure. So a bounce house is going to cost.
Max,
Insurance requirements, yes.
I don't think we allow those, do we?
What?
The bounce houses?
Do we allow bounce houses?
Yeah, you do.
They have to have their own insurance.
There was one
Yeah.
there.
So they have to be. Well, just because they're there doesn't mean they're
Well,
allowed.
when
though.
they come in, so we'll get calls to do the reservations at the parks, and we'll explain to them what the process is. When they are trying to bring in, entertainment or bounce houses, they are required to provide us
proof.
with insurance, naming the city additionally insured, whether it's a 50 less or 50 or over party.
So one, just a little more than that, let's say that people are using the ball field, and there's 20 people who are using it, and it's an organized thing every Saturday morning. Do they have to pay a fee for that?
Yes.
Where is that in all this?
That was in your previous fee schedule under, I want to say it was Ballfield rentals.
Okay.
Yeah, for some
Before my
reason,
time then.
well, no, it was last month, but all of that stuff is in there.
This is just facility, bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Program
I'm
fees.
hoping at some point in the near future, we can come back and address the numbers for park rentals, because an attendance of 50 is really high. Other cities have, 25 or more will require, a fee and whatnot, so that will assist us in, securing additional revenues for the department.
My
I
understanding.
probably should have asked this question last meeting, but I didn't understand it. I understand that we're going to increase the fees probably for cost of living. We're going to pay more for wages and retirement. But I see that they weren't exactly even. Some fees went up by 20%. And yet I thought.
I want to say
heard
that was the
something 3 to
non-resident fee.
5%.
I want to say that was the non-resident fee that you saw that kind of a spike in. Normally, the city tends to stick to the 3%, 2.5, 3% CPI
Index.
increase.
Okay, so if there are non-residents.
Then they get the
in
higher
ball-
increase.
In the team, then therefore they have to pay the higher price.
That's a trickier situation. Usually when it comes to sporting teams, as long as 51% of the team is a resident, then they'll pay the resident rental fee.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Diaz.
So just like the Dirty Dog Bowls, how are you going to manage that or supervise that or
So when
ensure
people
that?
come in to do their rentals, we ask for verification, whether it be a license or a utility bill, so that we can see their residential address.
Okay, so in reality, go to the park any given weekend and there's a big, huge party in the park and no one's paid you a fee or told you they're gonna be set up there. That's all I'm asking. I know it's difficult.
And it really is gonna need to become a partnership with code enforcement and PD.
Okay.
I know at this point, as we move forward in the budget, there is recommended staffing level increases for code enforcement to be able to help with weekend stuff. One of the things that I requested as the city went out to bid for security was to increase park security citywide during the weekends so that we could address those types of issues.
I've actually called the police and said, could you check on this event? Because I see alcohol, and I'm not going to go up and ask if there's a permit.
I see
but-
lots of other stuff too, and yeah.
Yeah,
But,
please don't
but
go
it's
out.
not a
Don't
commissioner's
ask.
job to go in and intervene so that you
Right.
don't get beat up, it's something like that.
Well,
Just
yeah.
call the police and they can check to see, because they have access to the records to determine if it has been permitted.
Right, if there was an approved permit, we would
Yeah.
notify all the proper departments.
And if not, they can shut it down, you don't have to. Yes, Commissioner Cohen.
Sorry, just a quick comment. This may be the opportune time to do it. In a lot of the parks, when groups are doing it, whether they've gone through the proper motions or not, people are driving pickup trucks onto the grass, and particularly see it a lot at Duluth, multiple cars on Duluth, and also even at Victoria Park now. And we know it's tearing up the turf.
Right, and that's the primary reason why, when we went through this bid process, I requested additional security on the weekends to be able to go to all of our park facilities and enforce those issues. So hopefully, we will be granted that. So we will have that and code enforcement and PD to help us really enforce those issues.
And Commissioner Cohen, to your point, it's not just turf damage. They're actually oftentimes breaking the sprinkler systems. And they're breaking heads, or they're actually breaking the underground
Right.
pipes, and it's extremely expensive. And then grass dies or floods out. So, if there are no other questions, I think my motion was clear, and is it recorded to make sure that we do have the adjustment of the change on the leisure center coming down to where it indicates swim center?
Yes,
And then
and add the swim center.
Add the swim center as a
And
separate,
the gym fee.
and the James O. Jesse gym fee. And that we are going with the 10% increase to non-residents and a 40% decrease to our residents. Do I have a second? Commissioner Cohen? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any absence? Great. Counted? Thank you.
Thank you for your patience in regards to the facility fees and program fees.
And Ellen, will you take us through a discussion on the priority list for commission goals, and I guess Cynthia as well? I think this was a part of your, where's my, wait, I've got a sheet here someplace, here we go.
Yeah, does everybody have one?
I actually don't know how to lead a discussion on this. Cynthia, thank you for resending and creating the clarity around the items. I don't know if everybody has it in front of them, but it was a revote.
Yeah, this was revoted because we added,
We broke down,
You combine some of the items and.
correct. So we combined it a few things. We made it very clear that it was a complex, a pickleball complex that was a bricks and mortar, and then it added the Friends of the Parks. Yeah, it defined it. But I don't know what kind of discussion you might want to have and what our next steps might be now that we actually have our list. I mean, it's pretty consistent in, the top three are continue to work on the projects that we've already put forth. That was our biggest thing. Maintaining our parks was number 2, right? So you did that list was pretty great. 2 and 3 look like they tied.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what
dropping
kind of
down
discussion you
to-
might want.
it's hard to tell us, is
Well, it says
create
right here.
Friends of the Park and request
So-
that there be a ...
Oh, right here. So there's a second page. There you go. It's on the back side. So number 1, complete projects that are already in the pipeline. Pickleball at Duluth, pickleball at Sunrise, bathrooms, lighting, shade, benches, adding Sander DG to the large dog park. Those were absolutely number 1. Number 2 had a tie, add shades to the parks and maintain the parks, which is improve the current conditions. And 3, there was a tie, request that there be an agenda item at city council meetings so that there's an opportunity, it says allow time during meetings to talk about the commissions and create a Friends of the Park. Does everybody have that second page?
Yeah, on the backside. Well, actually, mine's the backside because I printed.
Do you want a
No, I'm good. So based on that, I mean, we are already requesting, we're continuing to work on the projects that we've already got in the fray.
Well, and I think that number 1, which is by far the most popular, I think we'll be able to address in our meeting with Dr. Reddy and Jeff Kors. And I think once we have that meeting, we can come back and report where that priority lives within the city's priorities. And until we have that information, probably don't really know what else to do.
What were the 3 items that we were looking at? Bathrooms, safety, shade, and pickleball, right?
Lighting, shade,
Okay. That's
seating
right, all
or
of the
benches.
above.
The pickleball at Duluth, thank you very much. That's beautiful. It's busy and crowded, and people look like they're having a really good time. Bathrooms were also on that.
Well, this is really the document for us to take to the meeting with Jeff and
Yeah. And really find out, like, these are our priorities. Now we have to find out where those priorities fit within the city's interest.
well, and I think these are the priorities of our constituents as well. And we can always secure people to come and speak on behalf of these items at City Hall, because that always gets people's attention when it's not just a commissioner or 2 that are speaking, so.
I'll just add one thing, just personally. So there's really, because we had some ties, I was at Duluth Park this weekend, and every weekend that I go past Duluth Park, I notice how dedicated the soccer community is. And they bring their own nets, and they chalk their field out, and I mean, it really takes a lot, and there's a real dedication. And what I notice is, in the time that I've been a commissioner, no one has ever come to a public meeting or in public comments to really talk about what we're doing to support the soccer community in a designated soccer area. And I don't know how it works at the park, whether there's a permit or people show up, but it came up a few times with a former commissioner my first year here. I think David was his name. And really, yeah, Darren, thank you, Darren. And what are we really doing? And this is a community that is living under the radar. They, really don't want to make a big issue of anything. They show up, they have a good time, and it's consistent. It's every single weekend. So it's number 6 on this list, which is really number 8 because we had a few ties. And I want to speak for a community that I believe isn't speaking for themselves. And at some point, I'd like the city to really look at what it would take to have a permanent soccer area that doesn't interfere with the general use of a park. So,
I think it's worth looking at. I would remind you, though, that I've never seen a baseball player in here complaining about anything, and they play a lot of baseball as well. So there's a couple different groups, although they're all put into
So I do want to speak on that. So they do all have facility agreements. So they are permitted to be there. And those that don't have permits, they do rent the fields for whenever they do need them. We do work closely with both softball and soccer communities to help address as much as we can. I did a walkthrough not too long ago to basically address how the fields are right now. A majority of their concern is, there's just divots everywhere, and trying to come up with a plan with Stacy to help address that because they are self-sufficient. Some of our contracts, I'm looking at really revising because moving forward, as the economy starts to change again, we need to have really strong partnerships in helping maintain the resources that may not necessarily always be a priority. And so looking at what other cities do with these types of partnerships, I'll be coming to the table with some of those agencies and saying, hey, I understand, you pay this amount for the facility rental for all these months. Let's start looking at some, projects too that we can do to help improve, the resource that you use so that we can create that positive partnership.
Commissioner Armstrong.
I just want to talk about what Commissioner Goodman mentioned about the soccer. There's different soccer communities. There's the youth soccer, which is highly organized, and then there's community-based soccer players. Not that long ago, before pickleball became so dominant to move in that space, there were people in the community using the tennis courts for soccer, right? And unfortunately, some people were taking the nets down and causing a lot of financial hardship for the city. But the reason they were doing that was because they wanted a lighted space for soccer fields. But I think, so there's different soccer communities, but, just a few years ago, the city had a big plan to add soccer fields, right? And they were negotiating with a landowner for a space. But unfortunately, I think that project was associated with our former mayor. And once that mayor went away, that community was sort of abandoned. And so for many years, it was a priority of the city to provide that soccer space. So I just want to emphasize, they're organized in terms of youth soccer, but the Latino community who uses these parks are not organized in the same way as pickleball. And so I think it's important to recognize that and to recognize the city had a priority and told the community that we were going to create this or try to, and then it just went away. So.
Thanks for that recollection, because that escaped me totally. I do wonder about Ruth Hardy Park, though, because that's a big open space, and I've never seen it utilized. I've seen Victoria Park set up with lighting, temporary lighting, and Duluth is, it's like wall to wall. Is there a reason Ruth Hardy Park is not used?
They don't I haven't seen much requests for it, but I can definitely go out and take a look at the park and see if it's something that they can use and obviously recommend it to them.
Yeah, I would think the east and southerly side is an open area. There is some interruption with the turtle pond, and a little bit further closer to Catherine Finchy, there is a volleyball court, but there's enough space there for, I would think, 3 or 4 fields to be utilized. And there's nothing like looking at a park, going to Easter Sunday, going to James O'Jesse and seeing it occupied, and the kids having, playing games and stuff. And it was just, it's really great to see that happening. And I was kind of surprised. In fact, I was going to ask you, did a church facility rent the wellness park from us on Easter Sunday?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
I'm raising my hand like that. It's cool. Yeah, there's a United Methodist, a Lutheran church that was gonna use that wellness park on Sunday.
They did. It was nicely attended. It was really nice, and it was a permitted event.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm always excited when they actually permit things, even
Matter of
if it's a
fact,
small
James O'Jesse was also permitted for their Easter
For their
service
Easter
that they
event?
had. Mhm.
Well, it was actually not the park that did it, but it was a group of a
Yes.
family. Leadership is here actually to view one of our meetings. So, great, I appreciate that. Any other questions on the goals? I think we will take that document forward to our next, to the meeting with Dr. Reddy and Councilman Coors. Discussion of Prop 68 grant recommendations. I would think that's
Let
you,
me
Cynthia.
find my paper. I've got a mess over here, sorry. Okay, so I put together a quick little staff report, basically giving the background of what Prop 68 is. And so it's, in summary, a grant opportunity that is competitive. And right now, we are working with a consultant who will be helping us write the grant. She's been awarded several $1 million projects. Matter of fact, if you look on the application, one of the parks that she was awarded is on the cover. It's a very nice park. I had the pleasure of doing the grand opening of that park in San Bernardino. So the grant writer who we are partnering with is very talented, and at this point, there's three projects that we can look at. The first one is the downtown park project. The second is the pickleball courts at Sunrise Park, and then the third is a completely new park that we will work on putting together and designing and do all of that with the community. At this point, did you guys all get to read this? Okay, so just based off the criteria that we will be assessed on, the downtown park loses several points right off the bat because it is located next to the trails, and the trails are considered recreation space. And so the purpose of this grant is to try to place park and recreation space in areas where it's not currently accessible. And so that's not our number one. It's not a very good selection when it comes to the point rating system.
Okay.
The pickleball courts, because of the competitive process, we're competing with cities who don't have a lot of space in their cities and are working on either increasing the activities that can happen at the park. So we would be competing with cities like LA, Santa Ana, really tight space cities. And so we would have to compete with heavy hitters with not a lot of space. So at this point, our best option is really to start looking at developing a new park. And I want to say, and I didn't get, because I was in the training today, I didn't get a chance to secure the information from Marcus in the area where it's at, but I believe we discussed that it was like 10 acres. Do you remember? Okay. So these are our viable options for the Prop 68 grant.
Commissioner Diaz?
Oh, sorry, I'm speaking. So the stuff that we already have pushed out, rolled out, the things that we are desperately waiting to see happen, they don't fall under the funding that this grant could possibly fund.
There aren't many areas in the city that meet the criteria, so we have to be within a certain financial criterion. I want to say it can't be over, it's like 45 to 51,000 income median. So we don't have a lot of those areas within the city where there's existing park space that we can either build on or really kind of just restructure. So we're kind of limited. The downtown park, again, is surrounded by the trails. It does fall within that income medium requirement, surprisingly.
Wow.
Yeah, it barely was there. But there isn't a lot of residential area either, and so that's another thing that they look at. But then Barristo Park falls within that range too.
Oh, yeah, that's
Right.
nasty. But my thought, just behind my question is, we're struggling to maintain what we have out there, and now it looks like we're gonna add another park. I'm not saying don't add another park, but I'm just wondering if that money couldn't be used, but you're explaining to me.
Grant giving is a very interesting animal, and it
Oh, I know.
specifically takes care of not doing what would be logical to me to do, and it's unfortunate that grants are designed that way.
This particular one is a little bit difficult because we don't have very many options. There is a whole nother portion to this grant, which is the Prop 68 per capita grant application, where it basically focuses on fixing infrastructure or developing a park that's already in place. And so that list is a lot longer than what this list is. So I will be bringing that back to you guys so that we can discuss some of these things, whether it is, getting the parking lot done at Duluth Park, whether it is, providing shade structure at the different parks along with seating. At this point, that grant process is going to be much easier for us because it's not competitive. So, and the minimum award is about $200,000. So, but we can submit multiple projects, and probably have a really good chance for many of those that are submitted versus this competitive grant process.
Yeah, I'd seriously look at items 1, 2, and 3 on this list
I know.
because
And
shading, benches, structures, safety.
I don't know if it's appropriate to ask this, but some of the things that we're trying to get done, I know we mentioned, philanthropically looking for folks. Wouldn't somebody love to have their name on one of these signs or one of these new bathroom structures or parks or something?
I think we have a subcommittee working on naming conventions to make sure that it falls within.
Well, I know that.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking
But
if somebody
that may certainly be
would
something
step
that we
up
could
and
do.
drop some money.
You don't like the idea of naming a bathroom after somebody? Maybe a memorial bathroom would work.
I have a question.
Yeah, Commissioner Goodman.
So did I hear between the lines that this Prop 68 has different categories of funding? And one is the first three that you mentioned, new park or...
The regular Prop 68 grant is basically focusing on these three options that I gave you. What I'm going to bring back for Prop 68 per capita grant
Right,
is a much wider spectrum for
Right.
us to be able
right.
to write for.
I mean, we currently have underutilized parks and parks that aren't safe.
And those repairs and things like that don't necessarily qualify for this grant that we're
Right,
talking
but the per
about now.
capita.
Right.
I mean, I'm with Jody, and I have to think really hard, like, why would we build a new park? And yes, I understand in the former master plan, that's really horribly outdated, per capita, you have to have so much open space and park space. But if we can't take care of the parks that we have, why would we apply for a competitive grant to build a new park? So it'd be my recommendation, just from something that makes sense to me, is I wouldn't go after that grant, use my resources, and I would look at the per capita and try to be more competitive so that we can actually start to repair and upgrade and populate the parks we have.
I would take a different position. I would look at it very much that I would like to understand where that 10-acre park is, and is that something that could become a soccer park? And could we engage that? I have no idea where there's 10 acres on non-tribal land in the city.
And I don't remember where this spot of land is, but Marcus did point it out, so it does exist.
And my only fear is that it may exist in a very windy community, because I know that the community that I live in, its builder donated a 5-acre lot as part of, I think, Quimby, that has not yet been acted on. But I would tell you, it is probably a direct parallel to James O'Jesse. And yesterday at James O'Jesse, we were very lucky that none of the children blew away because it was windy there. And that would be another concern I'd have if it in fact turns out to be at the northern end of, the desert. Then I'd have a hard time being able to get behind it. But I'd like to see if we could find out about that, because I like free, but I like free that makes sense too. So
What's the dollar size that we're talking about applying for? As a
We
piece
can
of
be
grant?
awarded up to $8 million.
So I don't see why we wouldn't, as long as we don't think the grant process, the application process is too much of a burden, why we wouldn't put in for up to $8 million of funding, as long as we think there's programming that the city still needs, and nothing is perfect. But we
For
can-
applications? Is that-
Sorry?
Are you saying,
For this Prop 68 grant application, you're saying that we could potentially apply for up to $8 million?
he wasn't saying for, he was just
okay,
saying for.
okay.
No, I'm saying I agree that we probably should, as long as the application writing process is not too difficult or takes you away from other priorities.
So the consultant we're working with would initially take care of the grant writing for this particular project, which she has been awarded several times. So she would be doing a majority of the work there. I would be assisting with getting information that she would need me to get throughout the different city departments in order to complete the grant process.
Commissioner Armstrong?
Oh, right. First, master plan, we are under park in the city because the city decided to include golf courses as open space. That's a fact. But beyond that, this item on the agenda is really troubling to me, that the staff is asking us to approve. I guess there's a cost for the grant to write it, right?
Yes.
And how much is that?
I don't have the exact dollars, but those POs have already been secured for the city, so she'll be helping write grants for not just our department, but a few others as well.
Correct, but if we decide not to pursue this grant, that contractor could use that time for other grants.
Yes.
So there is a cost, one way or the other. But I don't think it's proper for staff to come and ask us to support this. We have no idea what this park is, where it's at, what it's for.
What I'm asking for is a recommendation for what option you would like to pursue. Obviously, the more into the project we get, more detail would be provided as we move forward. But in an effort to make sure that we meet deadlines for grant writing, I need the direction on what the commission would like to apply for.
I can understand that, but I do think staff should come and give us, you have more information about this park, where it's at, and things like that, that you could provide us at this meeting, rather than secure some kind of vote for us to go down this path of something we don't even know. I don't know how in good conscience we could support spending grant money, to write a grant for a project we don't know anything about, but staff does know about it, is not telling us about right now.
At this point, all I have is a possible location, and what that project would look like isn't developed. It would be a full community effort to design that park if you guys chose option 3.
Right, this is the last thing I'm gonna say. I think it would be proper in terms of good government for us to know what we're talking about before you ask us to vote that. It's obvious to me that you guys do know where this park is at. I can't support this. Blindly say we're going to apply for a grant on some property that I have no idea where it is or what's gonna be done with it. And in fact, my reading of these points, that you could make some good points, add these points up for some of these other items as well. So to me, it seems like, being involved in different government processes, that there's some more going on here that we're not kind of being told.
I have the information that I've presented here. I've only seen the possible piece of space that we're talking about one time. Like I said, I was in a training earlier today, so I didn't get to finish gathering all my information for you guys for that. But I don't know where this piece of land is located. Dawn doesn't remember where this piece of land located, so there's no undercut any kind of scheme happening here. I'm presenting the information that I have, which number 3 is pretty generic. So I apologize if you're gathering additional information from that, but that's not the case.
I think we could probably get behind not doing 1 and 2 because they're not logical, and you wouldn't lose if you spent all your time working on it. 3, I think if you come back and we could talk about where it could be located, because one of the things that we're kind of thinking about is we went looking for dog parks a couple of years ago, and there just wasn't a lot of acreage. So somebody may have pulled this out of their pocket, although there also could have been an offset to a build. I mean, I can think of several projects that are happening where maybe somebody handed off land. So that'd be great to hear, but it'd probably be easier if we knew where. Is there any issue in delaying this until our next meeting, or?
What are we in? It's
Says
due
August.
in August, I believe.
August 5th.
So it's due August 5th. I can secure that information.
And I'm trying to think, the grant writer is working on things for other parts of the city as well.
Correct.
Are those all due on August 5th, or is?
Well, she doesn't just consult for this city, she consults for a wide variety of cities in the Coachella Valley as well, which she'll also be focusing on Prop 68 grants for too. So I don't want to push this out too much and not have enough time for us to submit a quality application. So
Yeah.
can we do a Plan A and a Plan B?
Yeah, I mean, my thought would be, that we probably need to get a little bit more information for all of us to get a lot of energy behind it, but I think, you use her resources, because it's not like we could choose 3 or 4, because there is no 4.
Right.
So it's either putting effort into 3 or we say don't do it at all. We'd be remiss to say don't do it at all. Commissioner?
Yeah,
Cohen.
unless I'm reading the concept here wrong, we're talking about just really big, stark, grand concept, which is, can we get behind green lighting the idea of a grant writer who's already been hired by the city to put together an application for the only kind of project that this part of the Prop 68 grant application will allow, which would be for a new park, and they have identified a place for it. We can get more information later, but if we delay even saying go ahead, then I think that puts them behind, gives them more of a challenge. So if all we're doing is green lighting saying go ahead, that's my take on what I'm hearing.
Commissioner Boli?
If we go in with another new park and the proposition the grant pays for it, we are committed over the next 20, 30, 40 years to the maintenance and sustaining that park. And that money that it takes to sustain that park may be the money that would have built those other courts that we need at one of the other parks that we have right now. That's one of the really problems. Yeah, it could redo the bathrooms at one of our existing, or it could
The
redo
grant-
the lighting at one
the
of our
grant
existing.
dollars
Just
that we're
our
talking
maintenance.
about?
The sustaining of.
Sustainable
Got it.
maintenance, upkeep every year. Because we're gonna have to take on probably $150,000, $200,000 additional budget per year on keeping and maintaining that park.
On the other hand, I think our city is changing its face. I think today and historically, we've been a little bit of a retirement, environment. And I would say that we are bringing younger people into the city, and they're residing here, and younger people have children, and children do demand parks. Now, unfortunately, we're kind of built out. So as much as I love the master plan, it says within, I believe it's 1.5 miles of every resident, there should be a 5-acre park. Well, that's long gone. That space is gone. The only thing left, to the best of my knowledge, is tribal land, which we're not going to acquire. So it does feel like, we do need to try to be thinking about all these things at once. And I think Commissioner Cohen, really said it. Let's move this forward. If we find out that it's futile, it will be time wasted for that individual, and for yourself potentially, but we won't have missed an opportunity. Commissioner Goodman.
So my question would be, is the timeline the same for per capita? Can we?
No, per capita, I just went to a training for that
Yeah.
one. They are still working on releasing additional information, so I will keep you guys posted
Okay.
as all of that stuff happens. That deadline is for a little bit further, but the process isn't as difficult as this particular grant, and I will actually be taking care of all that application
Okay.
process.
And we don't compete, so we could apply for both.
Yes.
We compete with other
And
cities.
what you're
The per
looking for,
capita is not a competitive process like the regular Prop
Against this one.
68.
so you're looking for directive on a green light to say, let's move forward with this.
With
And
this
you'll
one.
continue to report back
Yes.
at the progress.
Yes.
So in that sense, then I would agree with Commissioner Cohen, that if indeed you're just looking for a green light to continue to pursue this as an option, then we should pursue it as an option. And then we can figure out along the way if indeed it makes sense for us to continue the process, right? When we were given a map of the city with open and available land to look at another dog park, there was nothing available that was 10 acres, nothing. And I will say that Cathedral City went through a competitive process to get a grant for a new park. It was an amphitheater. It was a great idea. And then they went out and priced the construction to actually build it, and they ran into roadblocks. And it's becoming what might be like an inhibitor. Even though they got a grant, it would cost more than the grant to actually build that, so.
Well, one of the things now, thinking back to Commissioner Armstrong, that I'm a little concerned about is open land may not be good land, i.e., I think about, hillsides and some of the things that are closer to the mountain that would appear to be open. I just worry a little bit about all of the issues associated with, whether or not they are tribal burial or whether they are grounds that should be shaken or changed at all. So that piece of that, I'd really like to understand as quickly as possible when for our next meeting, what the park is. Commissioner Armstrong?
I mean, I want to be clear, I'm not opposed to the idea of a new park. In fact, one of the reasons I got involved with the city in 2010 or 2009 was the second dog park. And it's been a stated goal of the city for the last decade to create a second dog park. I have no idea, because of the vagueness of what we're getting tonight, whether this land could be for the second dog park, which has been a stated goal of the city for over a decade. This is a proposal that's coming to us under a deadline, no information. Now we're being told, hey, let's just go with this because we don't want to miss this deadline. Staff does seem to know something about this property. I could make some guesses. I'm not going to say them publicly. But I just don't think it's right for staff to put how this came on the agenda and not given all the information. I just don't think that's correct.
Again, I'm giving you the information that I have. I have no reason to withhold any kind of information from the commission, as you guys are in place to help me do my job better. So I apologize again for any misconception that you may have, but I'm giving you what I have.
Thank you, absolutely. What I'd like to do is,
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, part to Commissioner Goodman, Commissioner Boli, and everybody's comments, this is just the grand concept to get it done. We're going to, I assume, have the ability to weigh in on what it is, how it is, and should we later on. But we're never going to get there unless we, give it the green light, which is we agree that the first two don't make sense, so the only one that does make sense is a new park. What would that look like, and how do we get started? And then 30 days from now, when we have another meeting, I think we can learn more. But we could study ourselves right out of $8 million.
absolutely. Can I get a motion on this? Because I think do we have another
Okay,
comment?
I'll make a motion that, following up with David, that we, support the staff request to pursue this grant, but we have it on the agenda next month, and we have a meaningful discussion about this. 10 acres or other acres for a new park, so that we can actually have all the information. I don't think we're studying anything to death to actually know what we're voting for, but I will support this with some caveat that we have a meaningful discussion whether we want to move forward with the information that staff could present at that time and possible alternatives for other parks, given the work that we have done on second dog parks. So basically, the motion would be to support this moving forward with a discussion next month about more details.
And a second? Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Recorded? Great, thank you. And I really appreciate, come on forward and really, it does feel like a city council meeting. Except it's not midnight.
Yeah, go over the 3 design proposals. They have all 3.
Yep.
We should have 3. I think you might have missed
Why
one.
don't I measure J?
We brought copies.
I printed them, I didn't get this.
Okay, so you need alternate number 2.
For some reason, I didn't get.
Oh,
Chair, can I say something while we're waiting? I'm
Sure.
concerned if we go past 7 o'clock. I tried to go to a commission meeting after 6:30, and all the doors were locked last month. So I don't know if all the doors are locked right now, but I don't know if we can have a public meeting if the doors are locked. I know Sustainability has posted a sign last meeting about one door that might be open, or they specifically opened it for that meeting, but I don't know what time the doors close, but I think for our next meetings, it would be good for staff to check if it's 6 or 7, because we can't have a meeting with locked doors.
Yep.
We have better management, not better management, we don't have full agendas like this. So.
and just for the record, I'm gonna leave because I'm supposed to be at church at 7. But the next meeting is scheduled for Memorial Day. The next meeting date is May 27th, which is Memorial Day, which is a holiday.
So we will have to find a Monday thereafter.
Let me check on the availability of the room, and then I'll get back to you guys.
Okay, because we'll have to get everybody notified. Thank you. So, a brief update on tennis and pickleball rules and tournament rentals is slightly different than,
So when we were redoing the agenda that was 11 items long, we were going to address that section in my comments area,
okay,
but I'm willing to go to
Wait,
comments
wait.
and then come back.
yeah. Well, actually, yeah, let's go to his report so that we can get him out of here and we can,
I'm happy to stay. I'm here. I'm here. Yeah. So I think in your agenda packet, you have 3 different alternatives for the pickleball at Sunrise Park. Basically, to address the
no, it's,
yeah, we're skipping around. So basically, that $2.5 million number that was thrown around came from that staff report when this item came to this commission in November, and then subsequently December 5th, City Council heard that item. It was a really conservative number. Basically, just looking at who had pickleball courts in the area, as well as the Newport Beach example, and that was a really conservative, throw everything in the pot, fancy, shade structures, bleachers, everything. Now that the council has directed us to look at Sunrise Park for this 16-court layout, the consultant was able to sharpen their pencils and kind of price things out, because Sunrise Park already has utilities, it has some lighting already there, so that significantly changes things. So what I got today was the latest cost estimate. So the basic plan, which is basically courts, fences, some benches between the courts, and basically some extra sidewalks. That's gonna run with lighting. Both proposals do have lighting. That's gonna run at $760,000. The fancier version that has 2 sets of bleachers, shade structures, outside of the area, like a waiting, some tables and chairs for people waiting, as well as seat walls, and fancy landscaping, or not fancy, but enhanced landscaping. That would come out to just right under $1 million, $992,000. So
What was the first one?
$760,000. So that's just the basic court versus the enhanced court with shade structures, amenities, everything. So that's the realistic number for building 16 courts at this. With that direction, basically these are lines on paper. It's still a conceptual design. We were hoping to get more feedback from you. You know, are there things that you see absolutely won't work? Are there things that you have suggestions? So that we can start, doing the actual surveying and then creating these documents so that we can have a project together. So right before you, I think the 3 choices, one is the basic plan, kind of shaped like an L.
I'm
Yes.
going to leave because I don't think this is agendized, and I think we're really close to.
Well, Travis,
okay.
since I'm running the meeting, here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We are going to have this item because it was going to be added into comments, and we will come back to item number 7. So if you need to leave, you can go ahead and leave. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I'm sorry, what did you just say? It's an addition.
It's part of her comments that she's covering through using his data, and we're doing this so that we can let him go. We can come back to 7 and have a brief comment on that before we terminate the meeting.
I have to go too, but.
So we're losing our quorum.
Well, we're just losing
We're
quorum.
quorum?
Yeah, we are. And guys,
No, I'll.
2, 3, 4, 5.
So essentially, this item I was going to cover in comments because you guys requested to be a part of the planning process. And so we were going to be showcasing the designs that we have been yielded by the contractor that we're working with, and also to inform you that you guys can send a representative to future planning meetings as we begin to move ahead so that the commission can be represented in the planning meetings. At this point, I don't think we necessarily really need to discuss any kind of movement or anything. It was just basically to present to you guys what we have been given and to, let you know that somebody is more than welcome to represent the commission when we do start hosting these planning meetings.
so I do have one question though. The $2.5 million that's been mentioned in the pickleball, and
Well,
then
it's on the Measure J documents.
right, but my question is that didn't obviously come from you. If your high end is 990, is that correct?
Correct. I mean, those revised figures just came in today.
Okay,
So the 2.5 was
May
the
have been a-
generic figure
Was
that
the-
originally
Without
was.
knowing
okay,
information.
perfect.
Yeah,
That-
but that
but-
number should decrease on paper
That
for
helps
Measure
quite a
J.
bit.
But my purpose here today is just to show you the concepts. I don't need a decision from you right now, but I did want to give you time to
think it
digest
through.
this and explain what you're seeing on the paper. You don't need to, give me a formal decision, but
Yeah.
if there are, what do you call it, red flags that you see immediately, that would be very helpful. I could come back to a future meeting, whether it's the next meeting or whatever, we could flush out more details to this, but the intent was to show you the concepts and explain to you what's on the paper. I don't expect a group like this to sit here and just make the decision on the fly. Sometimes you want to go out there and feel it and see it, and but it was to introduce the concepts.
What I'd like to do is ask you a couple things. Is this cemented in any one area of the park, or could it be moved back or forward? Because I do worry about the library wanting to infringe, and do we have space to be able to move it, 100 feet back off of Sunrise and still facilitate it?
Right now, so on your plans, what you see is says proposed future parking area. If the library does intend to renovate their current location. It includes a expanded parking lot, so that was taken into consideration.
Okay, perfect.
The other thing that, I attended the opera in the park, and then I was making sure where the tent layout was, and as well as that smaller tent, and all of these scenarios still allows for all of that. Obviously, that program is getting more and more popular. Every year it seems like more people attend, but it still allows for the current layout. I foresee one day, that project or that program might outgrow the park, but we are.
That's what the baseball field's for.
But we do have Cynthia that has, very aware of the programming that goes on in that area, and we tried to fit all 16 courts as well as keep that programming area intact.
But to answer your question, we're not married to that
space,
particular
right.
location.
What I'd like to do is I'd like to ask Commissioner Cohen to be on the subcommittee or the committee to attend that.
Absolutely.
But I'd also like to set up a subcommittee because I think rather than coming back and talking to all of these, a pickleball only subcommittee.
Yeah, and I'd like to join Commissioner Cohen at the.
Well, I don't know that we need to have 50 people going to that meeting, but I would say we should have absolutely the existing subcommittee get together with the designing.
Sure, it'd be great, and I would
elements.
welcome Commissioner Goodman's input. She's been great.
Park, we had 2 Parks and Recs people.
Can I ask you a couple of questions just to make this productive for the moment? A couple of quick questions. There are 2 basic concepts you're showing us here. One I'm just going to call, where you're calling Alt 1 and Alt 2, Alternative 1 and Alternative 2. One is more straight and the other is an L. Is there, from a planning perspective or from your perspective, better or worse or pros and cons of either from a land planning or building perspective?
I mean,
This is just
lines
very
under
Totally
generic,
get it.
conceptual.
The reason I'm asking is it would seem to me when I've actually looked at this and I spent time reading all of your notes on it,
Yeah.
what have you, that the one that's L,
Yeah.
seems to lay out better in the park. It means having to move less of the existing bike trails and sidewalks, and it just fit better in there.
So when the project originally came to life and really started moving forward, I think originally they were married to that location, and that's why the designs are laid out the way that they are. At this point, there's been a couple of things that have come up that may not necessarily allow us to continue to build there, but we can look at different parts of the Sunrise Park section or maybe even entertain a few other locations if needed. These are just very early on conceptual designs. And so more than likely, they're really going to change.
Great, so if these are, I'll just take it at that, then these are really big concepts. So the only thing I would then be able to offer just in grand concept here, because without getting into detail, you didn't, there's no elements that are marked here for things that I think could also be important to those who actually play on courts, such as human water consumption besides trees, and wind screening, which we know is a problem, and some shade. So those are just things that if we're designing a park, where do we do those type of things? You have
Well, so
attended to many
in
others.
your, I think it's alternate 2, you have alternate 2 basic, and then your alternate 2 Cadillac model. But it's all really gonna depend on how much money Measure J is gonna wanna spend on this, if that's the funding source that we use, or if we get private funding or other
Totally
funding.
get it, but it just, when we're looking at what are the elements that could go into a design, and whether it's the Cadillac or the more basic model, the 3 things that come to my mind that everybody talks about, we need that weren't actually showing here. There are obviously shade trees, and maybe that is the best way, but if there's some other sort of shading based on what we talked about earlier, such as a sun.
Yeah, the bleachers do have a shade structure. I mean, they envision shade over the bleachers. We did talk about chilled water, providing chilled water in the more Cadillac version. We did talk about the seating areas, but yeah, the shade structures is basically over the bleacher, the 2 proposed bleachers in the diagrams.
Great.
So, and then the other thing about the L shape, basically the big concept was that we were gonna do one that kind of went north-south and a layout that went east-west. The east-west kind of layout only really did 14 very nicely. And we found out later that the 16 is important. I mean, nobody wanted to give up the 2. So that's why that.
The only thing
that
I would mention
branch-
to you is,
yeah.
wouldn't be bad if there is such a thing as doing an easy wind study to see which way the wind direction is, and then you would know best whether you can it's best to orient the courts one way or the other. Unlike tennis, pickleball is ridiculously sensitive to wind because you're playing with.
The other
wind
thing
square
is,
with
I heard
the
you
ball.
mention benches between courts.
Yes.
And we had a speaker tonight that said somebody, I think in Cat City, put in benches between courts, cement benches that are causing people to be damaged and hurt. And so keep that in mind
Yeah.
as you're looking forward. Yes,
heard it.
Commissioner Goodman.
I heard it.
So I really want to thank you. I think this is great progress, drilling down and really getting the numbers so that we can have a discussion. So I appreciate that very, very much. I was a little concerned, Cynthia, when you said you don't even know if maybe this space would be able to accommodate. Other things might be coming up. I have to say, the library came to me, and library is 5 years away. And the library came and said, what are you going to do with those pickleball courts? What if we expand? Well, the library doesn't really know what they're doing right now, so I appreciate you took into consideration the library, the parking, and all of that. And I would hate to see that this actually be repositioned in another part of the city. I think we need to redevelop Sunrise Park so it becomes a usable facility for our residents who live within the distance of that park. And so I feel, and I don't know if anyone would join me in this, but I'm going to dig my heels in, that we actually look at rehabilitating Sunrise Park.
I don't think we're talking about moving it out of Sunrise Park. We were
Well-
saying slightly
there
away
might be
from.
there might be some conflict in the library master plan years ago, and we're researching this to see if this is true. But one of the library, and I'm not sure if it's commission or their nonprofit, came forward and said, "Well, our master plan says that we will be building an annex in that area."
So there was a configuration where the expansion of the library creates an opportunity to stretch the parking lot, connecting the existing parking lot to the Boys and Girls Club parking lot. So there would be a big, long row of parking stalls in that area. However, from the engineering, higher level looking at things, pickleball court or tennis court is flat concrete, fencing, and a surface, right? So should something like that come in the future, to take it down isn't like demolishing a building. It's actually rather simple to remove that type of facility, into whatever the library may come up with 5 years from now. From my understanding of this issue, the pickleball issue is now. I think we could construct this rather quickly. And so it seems like a priority not only to this commission, but to the council, to do something about this pickleball. But the long-term vision, in my engineering mind, if we had to, unfortunately, relocate it, the cost isn't as bad as if it was a full building.
Great.
Yeah.
And I would even challenge if the library is going to do anything within 5 years.
Yeah.
I think this is really helpful in the sense that we now have an actual drawing, whether it's the exact thing we do or it's just conceptual. We have a dollar amount that is now going to the $10,000 number. $992 is not $1.5 million. And when we're about to go and have conversations with city council and the city manager and say the order of magnitude of what we're talking about, that there's a cry from the citizenry to do and to reorganize a park that has a definite problem, we're talking about under $1 million or roughly $1 million now. We're not looking for $2.5 million. We're not looking for $5 million. I think we've now just bitten off something that is credible and scalable and that we can get behind.
Is this any opportunity for that secondary grant writing? Or you probably don't know enough about it yet to
I don't know yet.
Okay.
But if, depending on what model we went with, I'm sure we could write the per capita as long as it qualified. And I have to get on the map and see what areas will qualify for that grant.
Okay.
And if it is, then we could talk, shade structure and seating through that portion, decreasing the cost of
Well, we
that.
do have a liaison now that is very, very attuned to changing the parks and improving them for our citizenry, so.
Can I make a recommendation that our ad hoc committee for pickleball actually walk the park with your design, and as soon as you have the dates for this committee that you're putting together, because we did the same thing with Dog Park, where we sat at the table and it was, we pretty much hammered it out. For cities that can move slowly, the dog park moved swiftly in that. So if we could reconvene and then report back next month, I think that would be super great. And if we need to tap you for that, maybe walk through as we do that, that'd be really helpful. That would just be my recommendation.
Yep, we can coordinate through Cynthia and.
And
happy
maybe
to
you want to
meet.
join them on the walkthrough to evaluate. Thank you very much for coming, and I apologize for you having to be
No
here so
worries.
long.
Yeah.
Next time you could just look in the window every once in a while and give you a thumbs up or not, but thank you for contributing, I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
So if you would like to backtrack, I can give you the information of the location for the park, for the grant.
Oh, okay.
So it is on the north end of Sunrise, where it extends from Miralon project near the Four Seasons, which is exactly where you thought it would be. And it will have a connection with the CV link along the wash. That is the location.
We could turn it into a watering station.
Yeah, unfortunately.
We had that conversation.
Yeah, it is, we already evaluated Serena Park, the 5 acres that were being given to us there. Actually, and I wasn't on the council or on the commission then, it was done prior to my joining, and it was turned down. We said, thank you, but no thank you. But I would tell you that this is directly outside of my facility, so I will not be weighing in on anything relative to it. But it is not an area that would be, I won't influence. Do you want to go ahead and drop into the discussion of the pickleball rules and
Yes.
tournament rentals?
So, sometime in October or November of last year, Vicky had brought forth establishing some pickleball rules. And so what you see before you is her work in black and my work in blue. So we can really get this signage established at the pickleball courts. Do you guys need handouts?
Yeah, for
Mine's just in black and white. But
Oh, here,
but all
we've
I-
got color
But all I
coded.
have is actually tennis rules and not pickleball rules.
So for some reason, my scanner didn't pick up the second copy, but we did bring copies.
Great.
Yours are blue?
Mine are blue, yeah. So what you guys had approved with Vicky are in black. And the tennis ones is what's up now with the signage there. But we need to make some additions to kind of keep the peace.
Keep the peace.
Can 6 be, and this means dogs too?
For pickleball and tennis, are they both
Yeah,
number
There are
6?
dogs always on the courts at Ruth Hardy Park.
So I think the word animal was chosen on the broad sense.
Yeah. I'm just sort of kidding, but I'm serious because.
I know.
So your additions are in blue.
My additions are in blue.
So before I knew that you had an actual pickleball version and all I had was a tennis version, I marked up the tennis version with some suggestions, which pretty much marry what you have here. Although if it's okay, could I just give you my markup?
Sure.
Because there are a couple of things here, how pickleball is played, for instance. You'll see it here, but we've actually, in the last week or so, I was present when there were people who were acting, fortunately, they probably didn't past kindergarten, and they weren't acting very nicely about sharing courts, and they refused to share courts when there were many people waiting and those kinds of things. So, and was actually said to me when I identified myself as being a commissioner was, well, there's no sign. Are you making up the rules? You're just making up the rules.
Right, and so that's been that's why I wanted to place this on the agenda,
Right.
because I've been getting a lot of feedback from the pickleball community
So-
on what their problems are out there. And in order to keep the peace and, play nicely with others, they are requesting rules.
99% of people are just fine, and this person was actually not even a Palm Springs resident. But besides all of that, so I will give you a couple of suggestions to add to it. Otherwise, I think it's fantastic.
Okay,
Great.
so we're good with these?
Yeah,
I have a question.
Sure.
absolutely.
Do you want to go? You have a question?
Go ahead.
I just am curious of number 9, courts may be reserved after 1 PM. And so you cannot reserve courts prior to 1 PM?
So, what we've ran into is that the use of both the pickleball courts and the tennis courts is very popular in the early morning, and they get very frustrated when we do reserve a court for whatever the reason is. At this point, both communities, pickleball and tennis, have said, if you're gonna do reservations, please do it after a certain time so it doesn't infringe on the first come, first serve.
Got it.
So-
What about a tournament?
So when we do have tournaments, we only, they don't rent out the full space. There are still some courts that are open to the public, but one of the reasons we do allow tournaments for pickleball is because it's open to the public. We do have one reservation on, that's pending, and they want basically to shut down 4 pickleball courts for a private birthday party. At that point, I kind of have a difficulty approving it because they're wanting to run this tournament, but just with their group, which isn't fair to the community who may be waiting to play. And because it's such a hot topic in the community, I don't want to make it a bigger issue than it already is. And so that's why the after 1 PM we included, so that we can accommodate that. We just can't accommodate it at the time that they would necessarily like.
So this is also one of the things that I saw at tennis was that we had rented the courts to people from the tennis tournament,
Right.
and it was
It was morning, it was all
Yeah.
day.
Right,
Yeah.
and so because of that, we
count.
also will not be renting the tennis courts during PNB time to address that.
Okay.
How are these reservations gonna be handled? Is a staff person gonna be on premises saying
So,
you've got
so what
one here,
happens
1
now
o'clock?
is they either call in or they can fill out the paperwork online and it comes to us. Then at that point, we run we do the legwork to get everything done. When that reservation comes to the day of, we'll go out and post a sign saying this is reserved. What that constituent who reserved it should have is their paperwork saying I'm approved, so that if there is an issue and the cops are called, they can say, here's my paperwork. So,
I can just see people just
yes.
showing up and trying that, so it's.
So your number 7 is deleted.
So would you like a motion on these? Is that required?
Does it look good for you guys? Because you're our pickleball guys.
Is there anything that you
It
would
does
like
with-
to
With a
add?
couple of things I'd like you just to,
Okay, so if you guys want to discuss the few
um,
and is this for pickleball or tennis?
this is for pickleball.
Okay,
When others are waiting to play, the way it's usually done, and now it's just done by etiquette, but it'd be good to actually have it stated because this is what people were getting upset about. And this may not be the best wording, so I'll let you wordsmith it, but the idea that I wrote was when others are waiting to play, the losing player or team should allow another waiting player or team to play the winners. That's usually how it works.
So
And
winners get to continue on?
winners get to continue on, because in pickleball, you're not playing a set normally, or if you do play a set, it could be the best of 3, not the best, like a tennis tournament, best out of 7. So they're much shorter to begin with, so in some ways that makes sense. And then I said a set of the best of 3 games is the maximum allowed if others are waiting to play and courts are otherwise full.
so I think originally when Vicky had done this part, it was because there was so many people waiting in line that it was just easier to rotate all 4 players out and get another 4 in, and then once they're off the court, they can go back and sign in. That way we have a constant rotation, because I can see some issues going on with, well, I won the last time, and so at what point do you say, okay, if you have a team that just keeps winning everything, when do they get off the court? Because I see that being a problem.
That's why I said that's a set.
3.
They get a max of 3, so that's why I put them both there. But
Okay.
that's kind of typically how something is played, and you can define it as being, even if you're winning, you only get and you win all 3, then you have to let somebody else come on there. That's what I was trying to capture here. Otherwise, it's possible that somebody could get on the court and play very quickly because it's 11-0 or 11-1.
How
and
long
it's gone.
would that take? If, let's just say you have a winning team and, they play these 3.
If they
How
play
long?
3, it all depends on the other team, but it could be as fast as 10 minutes.
And as long as?
If it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, oddly, 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh. Well, soon we're gonna have 16 courts.
Yeah, it's really what all this is doing is trying to get the people who are a little bit remedial about just learning how to be cooperative and play nice with the other adults and children to do that. And I literally had somebody say to me, "There's no rule. You're making up a rule." And it's like, I don't know what to say to that except that we're just asking nice. Could you just be kind and have some etiquette like everybody else?
Can we hand that in and
Yeah.
Would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make the motion to adopt this with any additions that you see fit, given some of my recommendations.
And second?
I second that.
Okay, we got that recorded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that is everything that's on the agenda, with the exception of commissioner comments. We'll go around quickly. Commissioner Lamort?
The only thing I have is someone asked me if you're having any success finding seating for Duluth Park. Remember, the park benches?
So when I did check with Kenny, they don't have anything in storage. So I will be looking to see what dollars I do have available left that have not been expensed and seeing if I can accommodate that.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
If
Commissioner
not, that'll
Cohen?
be a part of my per capita request to you guys.
I have another small thing, I don't know how to deal with it. Barista Park, you were kind enough to make it my park. I go by there every day, and how do you, is there a way to make the park for children only during the day? It is, I feel sorry for the homeless, but they're camping out in the park and kids can't use it. I know the issue with or with the Ninth Circuit, but is there a way of getting around that by saying, okay, it's only available for children during these periods? Can we do that?
No, it's a public facility. And so it's open during the hours of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And if we tried to do that, we would get into some severe litigation issues.
Is there a way that it could be limited, i.e. protected?
Like
and
fenced in?
Children-only area?
I would have to talk to Stacy to see if we would be able to do that. Because it's not a very large area, it might be an issue. I know that there's a bunch of cities working on trying to establish verbiage so that people aren't necessarily camping or sleeping at the parks, to try to address that so that code enforcement or PD can really address that issue. But I don't know how quickly that will really be resolved and established because there's so many legalities with all of that.
Sure, okay.
So would you like that added to a future agenda as an opportunity to solve?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cohen?
Just very briefly, I can tell you that people at Duluth Park who are playing on the pickleball courts, great sense of relief because there's more space. People are very, very happy. And I actually suggested to people in some of the public forums that they send thank you notes to the
They did,
Parks
thank
and
you.
Recreation Department. And I just, hopefully, you got a number of those as well. And they were on I simply said, why don't, we always are complaining, this has gone well, why don't we let them know about our gratitude? So I hope you did.
It did. We received several, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Coldonado.
No comments. It's just a great meeting, and I'm glad that we finally, we're moving along.
Great.
That's good.
Commissioner Goodman. Commissioner Boli.
Just one comment I'll make to everybody. This card that's out here on the, about how we speak in the microphones, was trying to watch a couple of the other commissions. If you're sitting back like this, or your microphone is about as far as Charles is, you can't pick it up when you're trying to listen to him at home. So for everybody, it is better if you bring your microphone up. And that's what this means, I guess, because I missed a lot of the things that one person was saying at a meeting. That's all I got to say.
Absolutely. Commissioner Dilatory. Great. I would just like to thank you all very much. I apologize that it ran so long, but I think it was imperative that we go through all the stuff that we have. So thank you for your attention, and we will close this meeting to a time to be determined.
Yes.
Which you will get to us.
Yes, I
a
will work
request.
with the schedulers of this room to see what dates we have available and send out an email tomorrow with options so we can get that moving.
Great. Thank you very much.